So you want me to tell you the story of my life?
Like I said, that's what I do. I interview people. I'm a collector of lives.
Welcome to Table Talk. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. This is the show where I go one-on-one with a creator, author, illustrator, publisher, or other mover and shaker in the world of tabletop games, video games, TV, movies, or any other area of the geekverse.
You followed me here, didn't you?
Yeah, I suppose I did. You seem very interesting. This is where you live?
Yes, this is my home. Welcome.
So, what do you do?
I'm a vampire.
That's something I haven't heard before.
Guests have included individuals such as Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels, creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and even the author of Star Wars, A Pirate's Price.
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. I haven't gotten to talk to him yet, but maybe sometime in the future. But how about Brian Colin, the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG and sculptor of the world of Revelo monster busts? Mark Tassin, the creator of the world of Italtus, head of Mechanical Muse, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. I've spoken with Jeff Engelstein, game designer and former commentator on the Dice Tower. He and I got deep into the statistics, probability, and psychological function of dice in tabletop games. Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games and crowdfunder extraordinaire. He's published many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. I've spoken with Sydney Engelstein from Indie Boards and Cards to talk about what it really takes to publish a board game in today's environment and what it would take for you to get published if you were trying to get a publisher for your board game. I've spoken with Ajit George about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and his development of the Journey Through the Radiant Citadel Dungeons & Dragons book. Let's see, who else have I spoken to?
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Yes, I really appreciate her taking the time to speak with me. That was a great interview. I've also spoken with Kamran Pasha, writer and novelist who's been working in Hollywood for over 20 years. His projects have included Emmy and Golden Globe nominated Sleeper Cell, Kings, Nikita, and Roswell, New Mexico. His analysis and commentary have been very popular on YouTube. I've gotten to speak with Paul Shadow, the former network executive who has made quite a splash here on YouTube with his reaction videos to current movies and films. He and I discussed the status of independent film and web productions online today. Brianna da Silva is a reoccurring guest on the show and a very popular one at that. She's an author and director, and she was also the co-writer of the cultist comedy web show that's here on the channel. She and I regularly meet to study and analyze stories. I've also gotten to speak with of the Positive Fandom channel. She's an ally in our effort to be a positive and constructive force in the geekverse. Are you ready? Have you got your drink? Are you all settled in? You might want to buckle up because it could be a wild ride. We're about to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and the geekverse through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Table Talk. It is great to have you here this evening. I am so excited about tonight because, as Brent was just saying here, tonight we have the quartet of awesome. So thank you so much for that. I was saying that we have the trifecta of guests here. We'll be talking about the Barbie movie, specifically analyzing its story structure. And we have our favorite guests ever on the show, all three of them, Brianna da Silva, Doug Burton, and Kamran Pasha.
Yay.
Welcome, everybody.
Everybody.
We have got everybody here. Welcome, everyone. It is so good. Thank you so much for being here, everybody.
Thanks for having us on.
This is clearly a major cultural moment and a very controversial film, it seems like, but obviously it is
only controversial on YouTube.
Only
Not
controversial on
controversial with
YouTube.
the audience.
Like,
And it
I
is
also-
Not controversial with the people.
Yeah, like
But
I
it
have
is
not
clearly
encountered
caught the
any
zeitgeist.
controversy with it myself, so I'm
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting. It's just
There is no controversy here. But what?
All right. So then there we go. But regardless of what's happening on YouTube, it has caught the zeitgeist of the time.
Yes.
And is, well, extremely popular. So that's a reason to study it and analyze it. And actually, I've got this quote I'll put from Kamran that I will put in the chat here. So Kamran, the reason I wanted to put together this conversation is because Kamran says that it is a universal tale of finding inner power and authenticity meant for both men and women. It is also one of the best scripts written in years, with incredible nuance, intelligence, social commentary, and humor. And as a writer, I revere good writing. I will teach Barbie in future screenwriting classes. So when I read that, I was like, well, all right. Well, we're all students of Cameron right here. Then I suppose
We are.
should pay
Well, you're
attention.
not my students. You're my friends. You're my friends. I wouldn't go steal.
Maybe we're both though.
we could, so in that case, I wanted to pay attention to what Cameron had to say. It appears that I was the most critical of this movie of everyone that we're going to have on this panel.
We'll have a good counterbalance. That's good.
Yeah, so we'll have the discussion, but like I don't want this discussion to be on and we can touch on it or whatever, but the culture war side in general, things like that's been talked about to death. We can talk about that. We can touch on that. But my critique is my critique was predominantly from a structural side and the kinds of things that I thought that I had been learning. And there was a point in the movie where I just kind of got bored and I kind of tuned out, and I thought it was for structural reasons.
You got bored in this movie?
You got bored.
Yes,
You got bored.
Yes,
Man,
I did.
I guess it's not
did.
for
So,
everyone, huh?
we'll see. All right.
He's part of that 10% that didn't get it. Someone's got to be part of that 10%
of this who did not get it. So I guess I'm part. So I'll hold down that side of this.
There we go. We got the whole perspective.
Yeah, I'll just say I did not expect. I assumed that I was going to hate this movie. I went in, and I know not to do this, but I was there mentally anyway. I thought I wasn't going to like it. I assumed I was going to be arguing against the movie, and I had all these notes written down before I saw it. And I had all these notes, and I had all these questions, and all that went out the window once I saw the movie. And I had to delete all that, and I have all my other notes because I ended up loving the movie. And I could not believe that I loved this movie, because I did not think, 1 in a million, I thought that I was going to react positively to this film, and I ended up.
Well, you had seen my review on my Patreon, and you were ready to come in and argue with me. Heath did argue with me, or at least to let me know that he was going to argue with me.
I was. I was like, great, I'm going to have to prepare myself to
love it.
Yeah. Well,
because of Cameron, I thought I was going to love it. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm dropping everything.
Your standards are too high. Well, you're that guy. Hey, Mikey, he liked it. You only eat life cereal. I get you, buddy. Whatever.
All right.
Well, let's talk about the story. Why do a lot of people love it? There's a reason structurally, but we're going to talk about story today. That's
okay.
what I think the four of us are going to be here for. And I don't think it's possible to ignore political and social commentary, because it's linked to the structure of how the story is told, right?
Okay.
I don't think
I agree.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. I think that I think they're linked in this case, and I think that because this is a cultural phenomenon, some of that culture war should be at least touched on or explored in discussing this, and why some people are taking such a strong negative reaction or assuming a negative reaction before they've seen it versus what's really happening, which is a juggernaut at the box office. And I went on Sunday. There were still people, men and women, wearing pink. It was like an opening night crowd. And
same thing yesterday. I watched it last night. Completely packed.
And I was listening.
I had to buy my tickets like on Wednesday, and I almost was too late.
Yeah.
They were right from
I noticed a lot of the seats had already been sold out. And while sitting in the crowd, it was a fun crowd. They were laughing. They were enjoying the film. This was good spirits. This reminded me of what I used to love about going to the theater and feeling like you're part of something with everybody, enjoying this thing that's on the screen. I did not expect it. I didn't see it coming. I had a
similar feeling. I just want to say, like, real quick, like, it was it was cool. Like, on the opening weekend, I saw Oppenheimer first. Oppenheimer, I still don't know why. I can't wait
to see that.
But it was the Barbie phenomenon in both cases that was so like energizing, and it was so like, it just warmed my heart as like a lover of movies to like come to the theater. It's been years since I've seen any theaters like as full as I did. Maybe it's because I don't normally go on opening weekends. I don't know.
Well,
It was just like, it was so cool. So much energy, so much like joy, and people laughing as they're coming out of the theater. They're laughing, they're talking. And I know it's just so cool to see that and kind of be a part of that moment, that cultural moment.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my notes was, is this, oh, go ahead, Cameron.
I just want to add this. because I do want to bring us back to, at some point, we're going to start talking about the story structure. There's a reason I think that there are people that were disappointed with this movie or outraged by things they heard about this movie, or what sat this. There's a small group of people who sat through this movie and didn't get it at all, right? I don't think Heath is in that group. I think he has structural story critiques, but there's people that literally didn't get the message, right? And I think it's because that not everyone got set up and payoff in this movie. There's a lot of setups that are paid off. People either missed the setup or they missed the payoff. And that's why they're thinking the message is the opposite of what it is, because they missed one of those two poles.
Well, I've got notes about setup and payoff. Well, do you want to lead us off then, Cameron? Then lead us off with start with this movie and its story structure and how it. I mean, Doug and I will sit down and go through a movie for 4 or 5 hours, and we start from the very beginning and we go through. But so I don't know how much time everybody has. Probably not that. But start with where you would want to start if you were teaching a class on this, because you said you would be interested in teaching this. Like, what would you say about this? Then let's start us off, then, Cameron.
Well, before I do that, I'd interrupted Doug quite rudely. So, Doug, you had wanted to say something. I want to let you say that.
Oh, no.
It's
a panel.
Okay, we'll jump in. All right.
Go ahead. Lead us off. I'm curious to see how you set it up.
All right. So for me, just looking at this from a storyteller's point of view, and I just want to add that it's interesting that professional storytellers are reacting to this differently than perhaps some of the commentary class. And I include beyond YouTube. I think there's a lot of political commentary about this that is also getting surprising slap back from the people they thought were going to support it, particularly in the conservative circles. A lot of conservative women are like, what are you talking about? That's not the movie I saw. Why are you telling us? Again, we'll get to setup and payoff. So but you have people like Ethan Van Sciver, very popular comic book artist, has dedicated his public persona and is, to fighting extreme leftist messaging and storytelling. He essentially lost his job as a professional comic book artist and had to become an independent artist because he wouldn't back down on resisting that political messaging in the comic book industry, and became a kind of martyr and a hero to a lot of people. and then as a result, and he came out with the same analysis that I did. He did very extensive analysis on Twitter, and then did YouTube videos explaining why he loved Barbie. And people were shocked by that because he's a pretty right-wing guy. He's more right-wing than I am, right? People consider me relatively conservative, and he's out there proudly that, and he's like, you guys don't get the story. As a storyteller, he was actually the same emotional anger that I had, while people kept saying, why do you keep writing about this on reviews and Patreon? Why do you keep talking about it? Because as a storyteller, I was upset that people weren't getting the story, in my opinion. So let's look at story, okay? Let's look at so what's interesting about this movie is that it is very much, number one, let's classify genre, I think, before we even get into story structure. I think genre.
Okay.
I'm of the opinion. So why don't we start a conversation first on genre, and then we'll make it broader and get more and more specific. So let's start with genre. Okay. I believe this movie is a satire. I use that phrase. I think yes, I believe it is a satire on the level of Dr. Strangelove, on the level of Blazing Saddles, and I would even put it on the level of the Pink Panther movies, which are more absurdist comedy, but they do actually have social commentary in them, right? And through Inspector Clouseau's silliness, he plays the holy fool that shows us the silliness of the world, right? I think that is what is trying to be done here. And if someone is already approaching this not understanding that it is a satire, it's like watching Pink Panther going, oh, this movie is an offensive movie that makes cops look like morons. All cops are bad. ACAB, defund the police. That's what they're trying to say. If you take that movie on the surface, it's, cops are buffoons, but that's not what the movie is saying, right? Any more than you've got Dr. Strangelove is not a pro-militaristic movie, nor is even though it appears to be, and nor is Blazing Saddles a pro-racism movie. It's about commentary about race, amongst many other things. So let's start with a conversation about genre and perceptions about genre, and then maybe start lasering in. I'll open it up to the panel.
So I wrote South Park. South Park has really silly, absurd plot lines, and I wrote down Team America, things that have commentary, but aren't taking themselves too seriously. They're playing. So one of the big things for me that separated where I thought I was going to be from where I was is in terms of genre and satire. I think this is a special kind of satire. I realized at some point that these were the storytellers were playing with Barbies on screen. This was play space. They're playing. And I think even though there's political messaging or political terms that would normally kind of set me off or make me go, I don't know what they're trying to say. I never got that because all of that was subordinated to the playing. They were always playing in this film. And it's funny because I watched by luck. You're talking about some of the people commenting in a negative light or not getting it. Or I was watching South Park the other day, the one with Margarine, where the girls had one of those things that that tell the future.
The fortune.
I think they even have that in this movie. I think Weird
did.
Barbie had something like that. Yeah.
They did have that. So the boys were watching the girls play with this, and the boys took this really seriously. They had to infiltrate the girls' group with Butters by dressing him up as a girl, and so the girls took this as fun and lighthearted and silly and trying to enjoy it, while the guys were taking this as no one should have this power. We need to destroy it. I feel like that's where you might be getting some people missing. They're taking it too seriously when this is playing. Yeah. This is playtime.
And it's a very like self-aware movie too. Like it's funny because it's so like the tone is really interesting. It's so ridiculous and so silly, but then at the same time, very real and human and like deep, like surprisingly deep. But it's doing both of those at the same time. And I think maybe that creates some disconnect for some people. I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm comfortable with something being very silly and deep at the same time. Well, but maybe that throws people off. I don't know.
They did certain things in the beginning of the movie, and then they consist about interacting with toys. The plastic doors you open in the fridge, the paper stickers, there's no water in the cups. That's playtime. That's what playtime is like, right? Especially it sounds like for girls who played with Barbies. And there was a scene that I didn't understand at first because everyone was the women were laughing. And I was like, what are they laughing at? And there's a scene where Margot Robbie is sitting down and she's not sitting right. And she slowly falls over and then she stretches.
Which is what happens to a Barbie.
Barbie does that.
What's a Barbie? You leave the Barbie sitting there.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my God.
On her face down because little girls leave the doll lying like that.
But that's interacting with toys. That's an homage to interacting with toys. And I think because Barbie has meant different things to different generations. My mom's generation, she told me stories about Barbie and how she couldn't get one. She had to go to her friend's house to play. My sister and in the 80s and 90s, and then what it means today and some of the backlash. So but playing with Barbie is the one through line through all of that. And I think that this film understood that. So I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
Well, I was going to say that if we're talking about genre as satire, I completely got that. And that seems to be one of the big divisions, that when there's controversy on YouTube, the people who don't get satire. So, I mean, there is that. But I think most of us got, all of us got that. It seems like. Okay, so that's why I was saying, we can move beyond arguing that.
Yeah, but not everyone did get that. And I think that's the first disconnect that we're having with some people. It's perfectly fair to watch the movie and not like it. If you want to see
like what it is.
Yeah, if you see it for what it is. If you're like, if you're saying this movie is this when it is not that, then you just didn't get a viewing experience it's like looking at Picasso and thinking that you're looking at traditional Greek, art structures, and you're not. I mean, you have to appreciate it for what it is attempting to do. So number one, and then you decide whether it successfully did that within its attempt, right? So that's the first thing. So genre is where we start with. Now okay. Let's look a little bit at just world. Let's look at world. We're getting, going from very big to an archetypal idea of a genre to world.
Okay.
So now this is a place where there's, this is multiple worlds. This is an effort to tell a story from multiple worlds, right? It's multiple dimensions, if you'd like. We start off in the Barbie world, right? We enter into our world, but then there is, as someone pointed out really brilliantly, it might have been even Doug, I don't remember, someone in my Patreon pointed this out, that there is something in between. It's the Mattel office. That's actually we in the study of religion, we talk about what's called the liminal phase. If those of you have seen my article I've written about story structure, and I use the concept of the liminal phase, which is central to how I teach storytelling. So that's why I want to go there first, right? Because the idea is that the liminal phase in the study of religion is that in every religion, in every religious story, whether it's the story of the Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, every story, there's a moment where where the hero-heroine is in a transitional dimension, right? Whether it is Jesus out there in the desert being tempted by Satan, right? It's Moses at the burning bush. It's the Prophet Muhammad going to heaven on the on the Buraq, from Jerusalem. There's always something that's between two realms, right? And so that's where magic is found. That's where wisdom is found. That's where discovery is found. And that's the point where you leave behind one essence of reality to mature to another, right? And what's also interesting, that the Mattel office, which is, because we see the magical childlike world of Barbie Land. We see the rough and tumble real world of Santa Monica. Literally, if you look out my window, they filmed this movie outside. I didn't even know. I wish I'd been there because it's my park. When they're rollerblading, it's in my park, right? And I recognize all the landmarks. And I was like, I wish I'd been there when they're filming. I would have seen Margot Robbie, but they filmed someday when I didn't notice. So, but there's rough and tumble of Los Angeles, right? They see that, and then you have Mattel, which is this other dimensional world where you have real human beings acting like dolls, acting in very strange ways, right? That are almost puppet-like. That's not normal, right? That's why Will Ferrell is the perfect character in there as the CEO of Mattel.
He did a good job.
Yeah, that's who he is. The dude is famous for being a liminal guy. He's human, but he's kind of a weirdo. He's a beloved weirdo. He's always going to be that guy. That's his palette, right? And so he's a perfect guy for this. But now also I want to link this idea of the liminal phase of transition of two worlds with who is the central child of the movie. It's not a child. It is a teenager. It is a tweenager. It is a 13, 14-year-old girl who's probably in junior high school, not even in high school. Talk about middle school, right? Which is liminal. It is between elementary school when you are a prepubescent child and high school where at least you're a young adult, right? And that's why most of us, certainly my experience in junior high school was terrible because, your body is now changing into the reproductive body of an adult, but your mind is still that of a child. And so that's why you have so much, abuse and bullying and just, children turning on each other because they don't understand what's happening to them. They have the physical desires of an adult beginning to form, but they still have the ego of a child, and it's a very dangerous combination, right? And so it has to be told. And one of the people didn't understand the movie, in my opinion, were like, "This was supposed to be a movie for little girls." It's not. It is meant to be PG-13. It is meant to be PG-13 because it is the liminal world. PG-13 is between parental guidance suggestions and G. That's one world, and R and NC-17. That's another world. PG-13 is in between, and it is because of transition. This is a movie. This entire movie is about transitions from worlds. So maybe that'll open up some conversation. Then we can get even more granular.
Yeah, on the topic of transition from worlds, I don't know if this fits our stage or if this is later. If this should be a more specific thing, stop me if it should be. But it seems to me that the transition between those two worlds, I was reading that as talking about growing up. That's kind of like an overarching theme that I take from the story, that it is ultimately about the experience of coming from being in that it's for boys and girls, but of course it's focusing more on girls because I think Ken's journey is kind of like a boy growing up too.
And we'll get to that because they both have very different and interesting journeys.
Yeah, but just like there's that the Barbie Land is the land of play, and it's also the world of imagination that, say, a young kid would have, especially a young girl.
Idealized.
And everything's idealized, everything's fun, everything's perfect, and it's specifically how a little girl will imagine being an adult, because that's what Barbies are. Like that's what the beginning sets up, that Barbies are a different type of doll than a baby doll. You're not pretending. Your play is not you playing with the doll, like as in like you're the mom. It's the kid.
What's interesting about that, Brianna?
What's
interesting about that? What's interesting about what you just said, Brianna, is that because the movie starts off with this absolutely, utterly, ingenious takeoff on the classic Kubrick scene of 2001, right? Where you have start off with the obelisk, but the obelisk is actually little girls playing with baby dolls, and then seeing the obelisk of Barbie, and then breaking their dolls and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, right? But it also tells us something, because the little girls were being led into the past. Because they're not babies anymore. So they're being asked to play with they're being almost like being frozen in stasis by playing with baby dolls. And Barbie gave them the chance to look to a future of someone they're going to grow into, right? That was a revolutionary moment.
And then that shift of going into the real world is like very much analogous to, growing up and the kind of finding the harsh reality of like what it actually is like. You have these ideas as a kid of what it's going to be like to be an adult, and the real world is a lot more complicated and it's a lot more difficult and painful. And so that's kind of like how I read the symbolic meaning there.
Well, that's where a lot of the poignancy of the movie came from, is the breaking down of those childhood illusions and the imprint. She gets cellulite. There's like imperfections creeping in, and she's dealing, and she doesn't even know how to process that. She's like, I'm stereotypical Barbie. And Heath, you talk about in terms of structure and rejecting the call. She refuses the call in this. She's like, I don't want to go. She's even like, she does not want to go on this journey. She is happy, frozen in time where she is in this perfect idealized world. And that resistance, I think we all can relate to. Boys, the same as girls, moving out from idealized, protected space of childhood through that liminal space into the imperfections and the disillusionment of early adulthood. That carried a rather consistent punch in this film that even I'm a boy. I understood playtime. I know what playtime is. This may not have been, I didn't play with Barbies, but I understood playtime, and I understood that loss of childhood and the dealing with imperfections that she was experiencing. I thought that came across really good and packed a rather emotional punch.
Well,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
But I want to say one more thing that I just forgot to say about that is that you see also that being really important for the arc too, for Barbie's arc, because what she's afraid of, what she doesn't want is for change. She wants things to stay the same. She wants to stay in the land.
Very clear on that.
Yeah. Right. And what she has to then, of course, come to is to accept change and to embrace it and to find the beauty in that. And that, I think it's really interesting that like her choice, I mean, we're spoiling the movie. I'm sure people should.
This is spoilers. This is spoilers.
Spoiler
alert. Spoiler alert.
Leave now.
You haven't watched it yet. There's something wrong with you. Go watch it.
All right.
Join the phenomenon.
But that's ultimately what she chooses. She has a similar ending to Frodo in Lord of the Rings, and that she has the hero's journey. She comes back to the world, but she's changed, and now she can't stay there, and she has to move forward. She has to move forward into the real world, and I think that's because it's a journey of growing up. Because that's what has to happen when you grow up. You have to be able to move forward. You have to be able to embrace that and accept that. And I think that's also tied with talking about death and things like that, and being like, this change is worth it, and that even though it's scary at first, ultimately I'm going to embrace it. And that's the the stage, the process of maturing.
Right, that's the courage of maturing.
This movie did
willingly face it.
Start
Now,
with
the
something.
interesting thing is-
I'm
sorry.
Everyone wants to
I'm
talk.
everybody got full of all this energy. Forgive me, guys. And also, I'm very bad at reading
Go for it.
Go for it. Speak. But all right. So, because I want to just build on what Brianna said about one of the lessons of this, one of the core lessons is maturation and acceptance of change, and death is the ultimate change, right? It's the core lesson of this entire movie, amongst many lessons. But what's also interesting is that the humans resist change. We have America Ferrera, we have Ariana Greenblatt, wonderful young actress playing her tween daughter, right? They resist change in two different ways. So Ariana, she resists becoming an adult, right? She's got, again, because she's going through the junior high school body change, her mind, and the way she thinks she's going to become an adult is by, what we all did in junior high school, say a lot of stupid things about, we all thought we understood politics and Marx and whatever.
Cynical.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's it. She resists the world by thinking she's smarter than it. So she doesn't have to deal with the world. It's that contempt. This is all just, you adults have ruined the world with your silliness and all this stuff. And Barbie reflects that. But the mother also is resisting change. And, the mother is the one that is the catalyst for all this, because the mother is trying to go back in time to when she was a child. She can't handle the stresses of being an adult. So she goes back to playing with Barbies. The problem now, she has a mature mind. And because she has a mature mind, the stresses of being an adult are affecting how she plays with the Barbie, and as a result are poisoning Barbie land. The ideas of death and all these things that are in her mind as an adult. She's got a teenager. I'm sure we've all been through a very terrible lockdown period. This movie doesn't acknowledge that, but we're all coming out of that. So I'm sure parents were very worried. What if I get sick? What if I can't take care of my child? What if I die? These are the things that parents think about, right? And now the ideas of death and all these intense adult ideas are entering Barbie land, and they have no preparation because children don't think like this. So
there's no framework for it.
Yeah, and so because she is regressing, she isn't growing. And then one of the most important lessons, which actually her tween daughter teaches her, is that her tween daughter, seeing her, begins to realize this and then teaches it to her, which is that the part of being an adult is you can't fix everything. And so you have a choice. You can either surrender, which Barbie does, and I don't want to, or you can accept it. You can try a little bit, and that's the best you can do.
Well, to piggyback what you're saying about the mom being one of the catalysts for all of these things, I think that's totally true. She did a great job, by the way, the actress who played the mom. I wrote down a quote from Star Trek, of all things, and it said, the more complex the mind, the greater the need for the simplicity of play. So for her character, she almost needed to rediscover that basic impulse of playing, of simplicity, of letting go of that stuff, which is the lesson that Barbie has on Overdrive. She needs to learn how to accept the realities of life in the real world, where I feel like the Barbie's arc is kind of going backwards over the mom's arc a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to. I'm going to take a look at a couple of super chats, and then I want to talk about where the movie begins after the.
Yeah, so let's get into scene structure now. We talked granularly. Okay. Let's start getting into the scenes. Yeah.
Okay. Positive fandom. Hello, welcome. Hello, Brianna, Doug, Cameron, Doug, Heath. I'm delighted to see the stream. I want to learn as much as I can from all of you. Thank you for doing this, Heath. Well, thank you so much for being here. Yeah. And I talked on last Friday. So if you want to hear her and I talk about Barbie, we talked about that. Stray sent in last Friday. Stray sent in a super sticker, $5 super sticker. Thank you so much, Stray.
Awesome.
Positive fandom also for $2. Thank you so much. Says layers of structure. Screenplay has me mystified. Mm-hmm. And then Sable Phoenix for $10 says, I can see where Doug is coming from. Perhaps if this movie had come out 12 years ago, there would be no controversy. But we've been trained by so many films that want to proselytize in modern culture.
Well, and I think that they played on that.
People are like tense, you know. They're like, don't preach to me, don't preach to me, and they're just like, you know, defensive.
They're looking for the preaching. But Douglas, you were saying that this is playing on. The movie does play on this. Please tell us more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they play on that. I mean, I think what you have the storytellers or the filmmakers are playing with Barbies in a sense in this film, and because of their worldview, you get some of that creeping in. But let's say the big thing was the patriarchy. Even the patriarchy was a caricature of the patriarchy in this, and quite honestly, I found myself. I heard this was mean-spirited toward men. I was laughing at all the jokes on the dudes. I thought it was freaking hysterical. That scene where there was like 12 Kens singing Push on the beach. I thought that, I have felt uncomfortable for girls watching guys do this.
Because I've seen that. I live by the beach. And I always see the dude who's at that guy. He's like the wandering minstrel. He shows up at people's they're hanging out at the beach by a campfire. This dude, he just sits down and starts serenading them, and everyone's like, "What is this guy?"
It's uncomfortable.
And he moves on to somebody else. This is a real thing. I mean, I witnessed it. It's pseudo seduction, and it's the silliness of being a man when you think that's how it's going to work.
Well, I think guys, as guys, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to be able to laugh at yourself.
As humans, as people, we all need to laugh at ourselves.
Totally.
Not to diminish what you're saying, but yes.
Yeah, the gym, and there's like Rocky 3 posters on the wall, and you know what, the part that I was like, oh god, that's me, is when the one Barbie was watching The Godfather with and he's talking through the whole movie. I was like, oh, that's me.
Yeah, he's
I thought about Brianna while I was going on too.
That made me laugh because I'm a fan of The Godfather.
She's humoring him.
She's like, oh, really? Wow.
She's like, can you please start it over and just talk through the whole thing?
Scott, we secretly know that they're not as into The Godfather as we hope they are.
or at least they understand it a lot better than we're giving them credit for.
Yeah.
But to link to what you're saying on the self-mockery of it, one of the funniest scenes for me is because it is mocking the patriarchy. It is mocking a child's idea of the patriarchy of what the world is. And this is from children's. This is how a child misunderstands the world, or a juvenile misunderstands. And so one of the funniest scenes is when Ken, thinking he understands the patriarchy, starts going around like he goes to a doctor's office saying, because little girls play with Ken as a doctor and he does operations. He's like, he walks in, well, I'm a man. Can I do an operation? It's like, no, you got to get a medical degree. He's like, what? Because that's and he's like, can I be the CEO? No, you got to get an MBA. You got to have 20 years of experience. So the idea is even the projection that we get from some of the more radical, anti-patriarchy people is like, well, men have it easy. I was like, no, this dude actually has to do something to achieve something in the patriarchy, and he doesn't want to. He just wants to be given it to him as a man, and that's not how the world works. That's
he literally joke. Doesn't at one point, doesn't he literally say, but I'm a man? And they're like, doesn't matter.
Okay, so wait a minute.
I love that. Unrelated. I just love that he thought the patriarchy was about horses.
Dude, that was a running joke that worked pretty good throughout the story.
He finally breaks down. He's like, once I realized it wasn't about horses, I kind of lost interest in it.
Well, because he tries to become the Marlboro Man, which is a commercial that was created to create this false sense of masculinity amongst men, right? It's like I'm sure the Cowboys today are masculine, but both of them don't. They're not the Marlboro Man. That's an illusion. In the same way that Barbie is an illusion, because the little girl says, "You've made women feel bad about themselves all these years. You've an idealized beauty and a hip to waist ratio that's not physically possible." Well, guess what? The Marlboro Man makes you feel bad as a guy because you're like, "That's what chicks want. I'm done, man. I mean, why should I bother? I'm just gonna go my own way, right? Because since I can't compete with that, and that's the joke of it."
Yeah.
I wanted to, we were talking about scenes.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to bring up, and which is from the beginning of the movie, we've been bouncing, which is perfectly fine. We've bounced around, but at the beginning of the movie, after the 2001 scene, it starts in a way that I don't actually think we've analyzed a film that starts in this way yet, and that it starts in a state of perfection. We've talked about a lot of films that deal with the hero's journey, and often the times with the hero's journey, if you think about Luke Skywalker, the hero is going to start in a state of imperfection. He hates his life. It sucks. He's stuck on the farm, all of that.
Status quo.
And then the status quo, right. And it kind of sucks. But there are stories that start in a state of perfection that, hey, look, man, everything's running great with my life. And then all of a sudden there's this inciting incident that disrupts the perfection of your life. And then you all of a sudden got to deal with that. And so that was the structure of this movie. And it had been brought up to me, Doug, it was not the heroine's labyrinth, but the heroine's journey. Someone was talking to me on it was Sarah, the commenter on YouTube, was saying that this is a more feminine story structure that would start, and which I've never heard before, but I was looking into this, that starts in a state of perfection. Which, by the way, when we talk about feminine, doesn't mean a man or a woman cannot embody that. But this particular thing that I was pointed to was saying this was a more feminine structure, that you start in a world of perfection, and then that illusion is broken. And so apparently this has been talked about. Does anybody know anything about that? But I think this is the first movie that we have analyzed where we specifically see a state. Go ahead, Brianna. A state of perfection in the beginning and people having to deal with its breaking. Go ahead, Brianna.
I actually saw that comment on that video. What she was pointing to was the two forms that are not for storytellers. Doug and I have both looked at this. I'm sure Doug has in more detail, but they're both of these like heroines' journeys are not really from a storytelling perspective. They're more like self-helpy, and so it's a little bit. I feel like a little bit less helpful because I have looked into those too, and I don't know about the starting in a state of perfection, because that seems to go against what like both Doug and I have noticed that's usually,
you know what it is. It's starting the state of Genesis. It's starting a state of innocence. It's Genesis. It's Genesis in the garden, right? And what is it that draws you out? Yes, the forbidden fruit is the catalyst of drawing you out, but what is it that Satan says? Or not even, not Satan, God says, if you eat of this fruit, you will die, right? It's introducing the concept of mortality into the garden. And that's the moment, the catalytic moment when we talk about scene structures. The opening of the movie is this: we see idyllic Barbie world exactly as a child plays with it. Every day is beautiful, every day is wonderful. We see the world, but relatively quickly, within the first 10 minutes or so, which is a good first 10-page break, they're at this really fun dance-a-thon they're having in the Barbie house, right? Everyone's having a great time. There's a great song by Dua Lipa. You're getting into it, right? And then suddenly in the middle of it, Barbie, she's dancing. Have you ever thought about death? And it just stops everything, right? It stops
jars
the music,
everybody right out of it.
Right, because that's the moment where death is introduced into the garden, right? And then she's like, no, I didn't mean that. Where did that come from? We later, it's American Ferrera's thoughts coming in. We don't know that yet. But then from that moment on, it is a fall from paradise. She goes to sleep that night. She wakes up. The world she knows is different the next morning. She is different. The world isn't different. Her imperfections start appearing the moment death was introduced into their concept.
Well, I'll just add briefly what Heath is talking about in terms of like setting the table. I think it's not uncommon to see movies start with a routine, especially in musical numbers. Like I think of the Tangled. When Will My Life Begin? She said, I do this, I do this, I do this. Barbie starts very similar to that. So here's my routine in the perfect Barbie world. And then death is the disruptor of that routine, that perfect series of events that she goes through every single day. I think Free Guy has that. Here's my perfect set of events every single day, and then something disrupts that. So Free Guy is actually a good example in terms of here's a perfect world and the routine that goes along with that. And then what's going to disrupt that perfect world? And I think Cameron's taking it even deeper. And I think it's a good analogy. Genesis. Here's this perfect world. Yeah. Here's the routine. Adam and Eve do what they do. And then all of a sudden, this other thing happens. And now that perfect world is in jeopardy. And I think Barbie does that really well. And by the way, it is quite a jarring thing when she goes, ever think about death? The whole audience laughed at that because we went from this like musical number in this pink and yellow Fantasia of Barbie, and then it just stops. So it was like the jukebox. Someone hits the jukebox and the song stops. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I want to take the Genesis theme for a little bit further because
let's take it further.
Yeah. So what? And because I've always, as someone looking at Genesis in a symbolic way, right? I don't want to discount anyone who takes that as a literal story. Like I said, I'm a religious person. I take a lot of stories literally that non-believers don't. So I'm not saying that, but I want to approach it from a storyteller's perspective to understand how some of the symbolism that I see in Genesis, right? And for me, the story of Genesis of the eating of the tree, right? From the eating of the tree and the discovery that they are now aware of their nakedness, right? And for me, that is actually the tale of the awakening of the sexual energy. Because in Eastern traditions, the snake is Kundalini, right? It's the sexual energy, right? Kundalini. And one way to think of that, and the reality is all of these ideas in India were very much available in ancient Middle East or next to each other, right? And and so one doesn't have to believe Jesus went to India to know that those ideas traveled, right? And so it's certainly the idea of the snake representing transformation and sexuality is a concept that's in the Middle East as well, right? And it certainly is connected to this Kundalini concept, right? And so if the snake in the garden symbolically represents Kundalini being activated, which is sexual energy being activated, right? Then the realization of nudity is also the difference between a little child that we see running around naked and living freely and not having any shame with their body parts, right? To the moment when puberty hits and you become very aware, very conscious of your body. You're often quite embarrassed about your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so suddenly the loss of innocence happens as a natural activation. And now, whether you like it or not, maturation is coming and you now have to mature. So the loss of that safety and innocence is for me the symbolic meaning of leaving Genesis and entering the material world. And what does it say in the biblical story? And the woman, she will give birth through pain. We're already talking about reproduction and the pain of reproduction, right? Of childbirth, and you will toil on the earth, right? So this is the moment where men and women are thinking in terms of I'm no longer protected by just my mom and dad and the safety of the crib. I have responsibilities. I have reproductive impulses that are
my
going to
choices have consequences,
all of these things. And so one of the jokes that I think people misunderstood and were offended by, in fact, I saw it on my Patreon, people that wouldn't see the movie because they heard some commentator talk about the only one reference that's ever made to the fact that, Barbie and Ken don't have anatomical parts, that she mentions when she's on Earth, still innocent, like a child, and she sees men making all these sexual comments to her. She doesn't understand it. And she goes, "Oh, I think you misunderstood. I don't have a vagina. He doesn't have a penis." And it's very funny, right? She says it like a child would. It's not degrading or she's not. I mean, this is Margot Robbie, who's incredibly sexy. And she's so innocent when she says it. "Oh, you're saying silly things to me that don't mean anything because I don't have body parts," which is the running joke of Barbie and Ken, is that they don't have anatomical body parts. But the journey of Barbie and the final joke that people don't get, which is a reference to her getting biological body parts, and people were offended by that. I was like, well, that's the
Why were people offended by that?
People said you can't have a movie mentioning a gynecologist, a movie for little girls. Like, it's not a movie for little girls. It's for PG-13. Little 13, 14-year-old girls are aware of OBGYN. By 14, you're aware of it, right? 13, you're aware of it. You have to be. And so that's the thing I've ever heard. People, I got people saying that kind of stuff, I have to be patient with them, right? But I wasn't that patient. But that's the kind of reaction, right? Because people, again, it's almost like they don't want to get out of the garden. Oh no, Barbie
Yes,
can't. I mean,
yes.
they don't want.
No, wait, that's true though. When people are like that, that is exactly what it is. It's that people don't want to like acknowledge uncomfortable things about reality. Although it's also like, why are you so uncomfortable with women just existing? I don't know. Like some people are so awkward about talking about female anatomy. It's like even if we're not talking about it in an emote at all in an erotic way, we're just it's just a part of life. Some men are so like insecure about that. I'm like, get over yourself. You're acting like a 12-year-old. Like I have no respect for grown men that act that way.
One of the weird things I saw in this culture a few years ago was that there was, a lot of women, both conservative and liberal women, got together upset about the fact that there were a lot of local communities that were banning women from breastfeeding in public. And it's just like, this is natural. My baby is crying. My breasts are now leaking in response to the crying. I have to take care of this baby. And there were laws being, ordinances that you can get like a misdemeanor in some places, silly stuff coming out of our weird Puritan background. But look, you go to the Middle East, people are breastfeeding. That's a conservative culture. I mean, this is natural. But we have these bizarro ideas about nature. And so we project onto breastfeeding a sexuality that isn't there, right? And so we have a lot of pathologies that are unnecessary.
Yeah. And to be fair, like I was saying that kind of slightly mean way, like there are women that act the same way that will kind of internalize that same sort of shame about just physical female bodies and they will often what's the word I'm looking for? Like they will continue that on. You know what I'm trying to say?
But also, the movie references it with a joke about cellulite.
Yeah, exactly.
The women are suddenly become uncomfortable with natural bodily processes where their skin is changing.
Yep.
Well, and Barbie as a character, if you're thinking as a writer, and how would this character not having genitals is her reality? That's just the way it is for her. That's normal. And I think it's
and how could you make a Barbie movie not acknowledging it? That's the
you have to make a joke about it at one point.
Yeah. Well, I got a kick out of the one exchange where Ken's like, "Hey, mind if I spend the night?" She's like, "To do what?" He's like, "I don't know."
Little girls playing with the dolls. I like when they do the kiss. Like little girls bring the dolls together, they don't quite kiss, right? And so that's and again, going back to the garden, they don't know because sexuality hasn't been introduced yet. So they
has no meaning in this framework. Yeah.
And so what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. What are you going to do in my house? Okay, nothing.
Boy, I don't know.
It can be girls' night instead. Sable Phoenix asks, "I'm very interested to hear if Doug Cameron thinks all the transitional messaging in the film, we're talking about transitioning between different worlds, was intentionally written or simply emergent archetypes."
Well, why don't we get the person who's not mentioned in the thing? Why don't we get Brianna to answer that first? Because she should have been mentioned.
Okay, Brianna, go for that. Go for that.
I would think that it's intentional because so much of this movie seems intentional. It feels this is kind of a little bit, I'll say something that's a little bit unrelated to storytelling too, but it's relevant to answering this question. Like as a director, I enjoyed this so much as a director. Like it's just so rich visually too. Like I mean everything from just the intricacies of how lighting is chosen, how the set design is done. Like on an obvious level, you can see there's intention, but it's very subtle things are very intentional too. So I would be surprised if that wasn't on purpose. Like there's multiple thematic things going on. I would suspect it's intentional just because everything else feels that way as well.
Well, it seems to be a theme throughout the movie is this idea of transitioning from one state of mind to the other. That's the whole point of liminal space is you are in transition. I wrote an entire blog about liminal space and how it's perceived and what are different meanings of it. And it's actually more fundamental in the hero's journey. I don't see it as much in the heroine's labyrinth, but I do see it in the hero's journey when you are transitioning from the world of the known and familiar to the world of the fantastical and outlandish. It's more dangerous in the other world. That's very much hero's journey like. So it seems like in this movie, they captured the idea of transitioning from one to the other through this bizarre progression of rollerblading,
that
rowing.
was still fun to me.
Yeah, and even Will Ferrell's like, or someone's like, "Oh my god, it always starts with rollerblading." Like they're going back.
Like they know for some reason. Yeah,
I got a kick out of that.
So I want to answer this question from my Hollywood blah 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 experience, right? So let's talk now about Greta Gerwig, the director and co-writer of this movie. She co-wrote it with Noah Baumbach, who's her husband, who's also a brilliant director in his own right. Okay, and so Greta Gerwig's reputation prior to this movie in the industry is that of a master professional. Her reputation is not loudmouth political ideologue. Her reputation isn't, someone who's trying to twist movies for some agenda. Her reputation was, this is someone, if you get Greta Gerwig, if you're lucky enough to get Greta Gerwig to direct your movie, she's going to knock it out of the park because she loves the craft of filmmaking. And Brianna, I think you understand that, right? So she's a master.
There's so many references to film history in that too. Just
the Snyder Cut made an
she
appearance.
Studied it. The Snyder Cut, and she studied it. She talks about it in interviews. She went back to watch old movies like Casablanca, classic movies, classic Hollywood black and white movies, to understand male-female dynamics and what makes a movie like Casablanca universal. Because I think Barbie is now going to be a universal movie. People are going to watch this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and still enjoy it, right? They will, right? And she did that. But her reputation, to answer the specific super chat, is of a meticulous craftswoman. That everything she does is intentional. Every frame is thought out. Stanley Kubrick had that reputation. So go back to why she starts off with Kubrick in 2001. That is his famous reputation, that every scene, he knows exactly what's in the frame. Every piece of costume is chosen on purpose, right? And so here in this movie, every single scene in Barbie Land, it exactly references the toy world to the point of obscure toys. Like she researched discontinued Barbies from 40 years ago that nobody remembers, and they play a role in the movie. Everyone has a role. And every in the tiniest things of like the little girls play with Barbie. A little girl could pour like water into Barbie's cup, but she never thinks to do it. So Barbie drinks from an empty cup, and she doesn't know what it's like to actually have liquid, right? That's the level of detail. So if she's
even hairstyles are chosen very intentionally in this movie, like everything,
exactly, and
makeup, lack thereof.
If she's going to do that level of minute, laser-focused detail in Barbie Land, everything else is done with the same thing. When she enters into Santa Monica, every person extra is chosen who represents something, right? It's all very specific. The jokes are specific. I'm sure she spent a couple of years on this script, right? I've heard dumb people are saying, this is the old Amy Schumer script. This ain't the Amy Schumer script. Amy Schumer
way too sophisticated.
No, this is a Greta Gerwig movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing, to answer, because this is a woman. As I was watching the movie the first time, I was sitting there with my mouth agape going, I wish I was as good a screenwriter as this. I wish I said, I am now aspiring to be like Greta Gerwig. I was thinking that in the theater. I was like,
that's how I feel specifically with directing too. Like I admire so much. I mean, I loved her other two films too, but like now I'm a huge fan of her. And
she does. I mean, she showed total command over just such a wide range of details and images and themes, and it seemed to all work. Like I even got a kick out of little stuff like, in Ken's house, there was always a TV in every room, and all of them had a horse running on it. like all of those are conscious decisions on the part of the filmmaker to do that, to kind of build out this world that she's trying to build out. And I thought she just did an amazing job. She had total command out of everything on that screen, in my opinion.
And she also clearly. I'm sorry.
I just want to say quickly, for people who want to further appreciate this, I highly recommend watching the interview where she gives like a list of 30 films that inspired it. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, that inspired Barbie?
Yeah, there's so many things that she drew from.
Oh, I want to hear. I want to. You got to send me that.
Search. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
All right, so we got a great our friend Stephanie Janicek.
Stephanie, yes.
And she just saw the movie. She just came back from Barbenheimer. Actually, she premiered her review at the same time as this video, so it's very gracious of her to come in while her own video is premiering on her channel to do this.
Awesome!
Right?
Please check out her channel. Yes, she's on patrons on Cameron's Patreon, and everything's well.
Smuggler's Cantina, YouTube will find it.
Yes, the Smuggler's Cantina. Please check that out.
And I think, Stephanie, I'm not revealing any secret by saying that you're probably a little more conservative than the Hollywood types. And so for you to say this, right? Saw Barbie today. I'm still trying to digest all of the Helen Mirren rules. You actually guided me to the point I was going to make about the specificity of the jokes, because Helen Mirren is the narrator of this movie, which is perfect, right? Because now you have someone who is herself seen as an archetype of the sophisticated woman who's led a long, wondrous life and has had a full journey, right? Talking about all these younger people who are still growing to the maturity she's reached. There's one joke in this movie that was clearly inserted after Margot Robbie was cast, because there's this moment where Barbie at the end is, she's given up, she's despairing, she feels ugly, and and then Harold Mirren's voice comes in and goes, "Note to filmmakers, please do not cast Margot Robbie if you want this scene to work," right?
To make this point or something like that. Yes, right.
Clearly that was the dialogue, and then she went back and inserted Mirren saying that because Margot was cast 2 years later when the script was written. So
she was like,
back to the script saying, "Oh, we got this beautiful woman. This scene is going to be so silly. I've got to comment on it." No one believes Margot Robbie thinks she's ugly. Nobody believes that.
Yeah, she was like, Margot Robbie was a bad casting choice if you want to make this point.
And it goes back to the whole self-aware thing. Or another thing that's similar kind of a humor that I love was the moment when the president comes down and she's what she says is like censored with the Mattel logo over her mouth.
Because she curses, but there's no cursing. People are like, there's no cursing. She gets angry and curses. It's censored, right? Can I tell you my favorite visual gag of all of them? And there's so many visual gags. There's no end to them. But the one that I saw it again and I burst out laughing wildly the second time is when Barbie enters our world and she thinks she's still in Barbie land where women rule, right? Mm-hmm. And we've established, and then she looks at this like, billboard of all these. It's like a beer billboard of all these hot women.
It's all the swimsuit.
Yes. Oh, there's the Supreme Court, right?
I completely agree.
Right? I almost cried because it's like her innocence of like all these hot chicks like in bikinis. There's the Supreme Court, right?
That's the Supreme Court.
So good.
Also says the film mocks everyone and everything, even my perfect cheerfulness. No one is safe, and I love it. My take home is you can't have your cake.
Oh yeah. If you're a Tony Robbins type, the power of positive thinking, it's mocking you too, because sometimes that's not enough. Right? It's not enough, right? Sometimes you just have to feel pain, right? And that's point of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to adopt that as a motto. Sometimes you just have to feel pain. All right, Cameron, please continue.
Okay, so we're now into the story, right? So so now because of her realization that she's something's going wrong with her, we see they decide to send her off to her mentor, her Obi-Wan figure, right? Which is Weird Barbie. And that's one of the funniest things is Weird Barbie. We all know Weird Barbie. Because either Weird Barbie is the Barbie played by Kate McKinnon, very funny. She was Greta Gerwig's roommate in college. That's how long their relationship was.
Oh wow!
They went to Columbia together, roommates. That's how long. So Kate McKinnon plays Weird Barbie, which is the Barbie that has been played with too much. It's like the little sadistic little girl that cut her hair, set her hair on fire. All over her.
Everyone has at least one Weird Barbie.
And I'll be honest with you, I was a cruel little brother, and I did that to my sister's Barbie. I Weird Barbied her Barbie, and she was crying and upset and whatever. I was a nasty kid, right? But so I Weird Barbie. So the Weird Barbie, who's been, who the joke is has lost her beauty because she's been so abused and overplayed with, teaches her that what's happening is there's a rift, and the reason you're having all these things happen to you is that there's some kind of portal that's open between the real world and Barbie land, and you have to go in and find the little girl that's playing with you and solve her problem, and then everything's going to be okay. And Barbie's, as Brianna said, Barbie said, "No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do it. I'm not doing that." But she's like, "You don't have a choice. You got to do this, right?" And that she's sent off into this world, and that's when we enter the transition. But no, before we do that, we've now established Ken. We haven't even talked about Ken, right? So let's talk. I'm going to talk about the group. So before we go into let's talk about Ken. So I'm going to start the conversation with Ken. So we introduced in the early part of the movie as Ken, and it's said very clearly, Ken exists only to be seen in Barbie's gaze. He doesn't have an identity or self-worth outside of being acknowledged by Barbie, right? And he's jealous of all the other Kens that get her attention, right? And that's very much true of Ken is an appendage to Barbie as a doll. Right. And he only exists because Barbie needed a companion. At least Mattel corporate thought she did. Right. Or little girls wanted to give Barbie a husband or a boyfriend. And so they created Ken, and he exists for that purpose. He doesn't have his own identity. And, he's someone that she doesn't treat well. Because she's the queen of this land. And it doesn't occur to her Ken isn't her equal. He exists as an appendage, and she basically mistreats him from the very beginning, in some very hurtful ways, in ways that it's clear that he is hurt. Where he wants that joke of, "Can we spend the night together?" She's like, "Well, we do," and there's nothing they can do. But he just wants her companionship. It's not sexual. He just wants to be included with the cool girls because the world ruled by cool girls, the Garbies. And she's like, "No, you can't be in the. This is my." And she says it. "This is my dream house. It's not Ken's dream house. So go. We had our fun today. Now go back into." And she says, "I don't even know where he lives."
Hey, all right, wherever you live, I don't even actually know. I know. I laughed at that too. Wherever you live.
Insert a comment. There's one of the interviews with the actors where Ryan Gosling says, he's like, they say in the movie that they don't know where they live, and he's like, "I think my theory is that at night all of the Kens just like huddle on the beach for warmth." And I just think that was the most hilarious image.
I think that's exactly right, because they don't have anything. And so she mistreats him, and you can see he's hurt. He's lonely. He wants to be, at this point, there's nothing sexual. He just wants to be with his friends. He wants to be included as an equal, and he's not an equal in Barbie Land. He's an inferior. And she is quite in the same callous thing of a young girl who doesn't understand that she's hurting someone's feelings. You can't sit with us. Mean girls, you can't sit with us. You're not part of our clique, right? And so she goes, and so Ken, who's trying to win her favor, decides when he learns that Barbie's going to go into the real world and everyone is afraid to go with her, Ken basically sneaks on board in her toy car to go with her, right? But even then, and now I want to turn to everyone else, when she discovers that Ken is there, she freaks out and she's like, "You can't come with me." He's like, "I'm coming with you. Fine, you can come with me." He's like, "Well, can I sit in the front with you?" She goes, "No, you can't." Like a little girl, no, you can't sit with me. Again, the dynamic is you sit in the back of the bus. That's the dynamic. And from that dynamic, we enter into the material world. Okay? So now I'm going to let's talk about Ken.
It's such also just there's the back of the bus, but then there's also just so many little kid things in that as well. Because when I saw that, one of the things that I thought about was, did anybody play the game of life as a kid and play life?
The board
and
game?
You would be the board game, right? Yeah, and you're moving your car around, and of course your little peg is in the front seat, moving your car around, and it was always a joke with my brother and me that the wife was in the back seat. So I was thinking about the game of life.
So you Barbied your wife?
I Barbied the wife, and then whenever you had a son, you put him in the front seat.
That's terrible.
It's the exact opposite of Barbie world.
Yeah, little boy. It's funny how little boys and girls are like so sexist in the sense of like not really sexist, you know what I mean? But they're just like, it's the cooties thing. It's it's like one of the first divisions that humans ever experience is gender.
That's the level. So I heard a lot of criticism that Barbie treats Ken like crap in this, and it's man-hating, and so I heard a lot of that criticism. But like you just said, Britt, you just said it perfectly. When you're a child, Heath, you just said it too. When you're young, you are kind of weirdly pro boy or pro girl, whichever team you're on, when you're a kid. So when she's like, "You stay in the back seat," I didn't take that as her being misandrous to Ken. I saw that as a girl saying, "Ken, you just stay in the back seat because that's how we play in Barbie Land."
Right.
And Ethan Van Sciver says that. He says, this is how a little girl sees things. There's nothing more than innocence here. And in the same way little boys can torture flies without being cruel. They just don't understand what they're doing. I did that as a little kid when I discovered that, you can burn things with a magnifying glass. Sadly, a few ants fell victim to that. And I didn't have the wisdom to know I'm hurting a living sentient being, right? I mean, I didn't.
You have to answer for your crimes, Cameron.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, even the idea that Ken is an accessory, which I heard as a major criticism, I was like, I don't agree with that either, because Ken is an accessory in Barbie's world. Ken was designed as an accessory, and there's even kind of this play on the flip of, Eve being created from Adam and Ken being created from Barbie. Like there's a little flip there, but I was like, actually, Ken is an accessory, so it makes sense in this world. And one of the themes and messages in this movie is that no one should be an accessory.
Right, it's a commentary on that.
There's a rather compassionate attitude toward Ken in the end, even though they don't end up together. Barbie is more like, find out who you are. You know,
but if they ended up together, there's no lesson. That's the lesson of the movie, is that in order to have any relationship, you must have a relationship with yourself first.
that's right.
Barbie needs to have that. Ken has no identity aside from being in Barbie's shadow. He can't be in a healthy relationship with her. He first has to love himself. Maybe, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a sequel now. I'm hoping sequel is going to be The Adventures of Ken. And people on my Patreon are coming with incredible sequel ideas, like Ken goes, because all the Mattel toys, Ken gets into a thing with Hot Wheels, right? And those other characters. Ken goes on his journey to learn masculinity because it didn't work in the first movie. And so that's going to be fun. And maybe in the second movie, he will become enough of a self-aware person that maybe he and Barbie can click, right?
See, I think that would be a great sequel because to your point, I also heard some criticism that this is stupid because Ken and Barbie don't end up together. And there was a part of me that thought, well, it feels like they should, but that wasn't the message of this film. The message of this film was you need to find yourself in this imperfect, difficult world, the less idealized world, and no one should be an accessory, which is a pro-Ken comment. But in the sequel, it would make more sense because once they've defined themselves and they've kind of discovered their identity and they're a more complete human being, now they're capable of a relationship. They're not codependent.
Yeah, which is the journey of maturation in all of our relationships, right? I mean, I've been in my codependent relationships, and just some misery to both people, right? Feeling of being trapped and not being able to be honest with each other, right? And then desperately needing the person. That's Ken, right? I've been there. That's why I identified with Ken. And what is, and we're gonna, hopefully we'll get to the course because we're a lot to talk about. I probably have about an hour, or maybe less than an hour to keep going, right? But so let's keep so now let's enter into the material world. So now we've entered the material world, and we have the fun of seeing Barbie and Ken rollerblading into Santa Monica, my home, right? And they're down by the Santa Monica pier, and everyone's there, and they're dressed up in their bright Barbie Ken clothing, which looks ridiculous and silly in the material world, and everyone is mocking them. And one of the jokes is that there's a gay character that just loves it and thinks it's fabulous, right? But that's even there. Yeah, and that made me laugh. And there's a message there where the gay character appreciated it, right? And that's a loving message. Even here, you have people that will love you for being that, right? But then immediately becomes a comedy of errors of them not understanding human beings, of getting themselves into situations and getting arrested a couple of times because one, Barbie gets offended when people make these obnoxious, comments to her and slap her ass and whatever, and she punches somebody out, goes to jail, right? And then they get released from jail, and they're like, look, we got to get out of these clothing. People don't get it. They go out and they get these really cool clothes. I love Barbie's cowboy clothes. Ken, they're wearing cowboy clothes to get out there.
That's the blend-in clothes. Oh, yeah, right. I love more
normal.
I did love that, right?
That's all they know. And then, of course, they don't have any money, so they just walk out because there's no money in Barbie land. And so then they get arrested for shoplifting, and then they go to that. And so, but after all of this, they're like, look, maybe we need some time to figure this out. And then they separate. But the pivotal moment to me, and Greta Gerwig said this, that this was the most important scene to her, and it actually was the most touching to me in many ways, because she said she claims people at Warner Brothers wanted to take this scene out. I can believe that because not always the executives are smart. There's a scene where she sits alone on a bus bench trying to figure out what to do, and then she sees an elderly woman, clearly in her 80s or more, sitting there, and she's stunned. She's never seen an old woman before. And with the wrinkles and everything, and not the perfect body that she imagined she had, right? And she's moved to tears for the first time because she sees her beauty and her humanity. And that moved me to tears because guess what? It reminded me of my grandmother. When I looked at my grandmother, she was all wrinkly and saggy, and I saw an angel. I saw an angel. I saw beauty and perfection. I've seen photos of my grandmother when she was a young, beautiful woman. I don't even identify it. I don't even see that as my grandmother. I see that elderly woman, all wrinkled, and I mean, even now I can feel the emotion welling up because she was perfection. It was my grandmother, right? And there was nothing more beautiful. And that the humanity of the film is shown right there. There's no lesson of feminism or anything else. It's just look at the beauty of being human.
Yeah, I was going to actually make a point on that.
Okay, I have one too. Go ahead, Doug.
My sense was that I wanted to make a distinction, and I was trying to work it out in my head because I was like, there's a lot of messages, there's a lot of themes here which women are picking up on both right and left. So I jotted down this weird term I called feminine existentialism, which is not feminism. It seems to be something that women understand and recognize without political messaging. And that scene there is where I came up with this idea where I was like, okay, this is a discussion or a motif or a moment of feminine existentialism. This idea of what it means to exist as a woman, which is not a political, it's more philosophical or spiritual or experiential. And I think that this film hits that nail on the head in several scenes, and it's not an ideological take. Because my wife, who really hates messaging in movies as well, she hates especially the extreme left-wing intrusion into movies, the same way I think most of us do. And she was laughing her ass up. She really liked it. She said she got emotional, and she said that scene hit her too. I think Cameron, for a very similar reason. It reminded her of her grandmother. And also there's a certain, you're looking in a mirror. You will be this one day, and it's beautiful. Because you've taken this journey, and the woman's response is great. She's like, "I know."
Yeah. There's a mirror and there's an acceptance that's happening. Yeah,
which is great. It was great. I thought it was a very poignant moment, and I think the movie had several moments like this. That being one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I really want to ask Cameron about this scene because here is my question about this scene.
Yes.
That. As it exists, I would say that, yes, it should have been removed because it seems to me like a payoff without a setup. I think that what I would have done, and you can tell me why I'm wrong, please, I'm asking. But
I already know why you're wrong. Let's go.
Okay. But okay. No, please tell me. I'm asking completely legitimately here. What
Yes.
I think should have happened then is that when she got to the real world and then she encounters this grandmother, that she should have rejected her, because this is the first time she's ever seen wrinkles. We're talking about this, that who is this? That it should have been a rejection of her. And then you come to the end of the movie as her, as a change in Barbie, that is an acceptance of her. And that's when you get her looking, oh, you're beautiful. So I think that superficial, the superficial Barbie is it's not superficial Barbie, but whatever. The superficial Barbie, typical Barbie should have had some moment of rejection of her early in the film when she first arrives in the real world and what's going on, oh my God, and rejects her, and then through her story arc at the end of the movie comes to see that beauty and accepts her at the end.
Okay, so now
why am I wrong?
That.
Okay,
so you're wrong if I may answer that for two reasons.
Okay.
One is she's instantly unlikable, I would be out of the movie right there because I saw my grandmother. And if you disrespect my grandmother, I'm getting up and walking out instantly. Number one. But number two, it was set up and payoff because the setup was the cellulite. Yeah. The setup was the discovery of aging, of bodily change, of skin change, that she could not tolerate imperfection, that she could not tolerate within herself. And then she saw the final culmination of the aging process, right? And it shook her. The reason she cried is that she didn't expect it to be beautiful. And then she sees that. And then the final payoff is that wondrous moment in the end when her heart starts beating and she starts breathing because she finally becomes the big H, right? And so that is because the end, and to the lead up to it, I would jump into the end, but it's one of the most important scenes that, one of the people on my Patreon who resisted seeing this movie and went to see it just to prove me wrong. And then she was blown away. She was crying. She gave me a review. She was crying in the movie at the end because of this scene. If you remember the final scene when she's given the choice to become mortal, become human, she's shown the consequences, and she's given these visual images of a woman's life from baby to childhood, to teenage, to adult, to old age. And it's magical. The old women at the end are dancing at a wedding, right? And in the end, but the end, what goes beyond that? There's nothing beyond that because there's death beyond that. And then she comes back from it and she goes, yes, I want that. That is the full arc of the journey. First, she doesn't want physical change in her body. She sees the possibility of beauty in someone else. Then she sees the full journey of it and embraces that this is going to happen to her and she wants it. So that is why that's my answer to your entire thing.
Well, and I'm seeing.
I want to add something to it. Because the other thing I would say is just that change is a process. So we want to see her experiencing this growth and this change like in steps and stages. And so that's like a moment. That's an important, moment along that journey of realizing like what Cameron was saying, like seeing that someone else realizing that can be beautiful. She hasn't completely come to the point yet of accepting all the change that's going to come, but it's part of the the process there. I think it would be too abrupt if it was just like she was just completely rejecting all instances of change and everything like that, and then all of a sudden at the end she's like, oh, okay, now I'm on board.
No,
So
I'm not arguing for abruptness. I'm not arguing for that. That's not what I'm
saying. I'm saying he wanted more of an arc.
I'm just saying
I'm looking
I think
for
that's
more
why
of
it's
an
that way.
arc. Yeah.
Well, I think he's saying he wanted more of an arc where it started from the opposite position and ended in
But how could you make her likable if she disrespects or finds a beautiful old woman repulsive? I think that's the end of the movie.
But it's also
that's what you do with villains.
Well, that's possible. That's possible.
I don't know how to construct that.
Maybe you don't have that arc.
I think there's a subtle distinction.
Well, that's what I think.
Gerwig
said that. Go ahead.
Just real quick, because this is not a change. This is not about her changing from not wanting to be old to then being okay with being old. It's specifically being okay with change. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's more it's broader than just the growing old. It's about change in general. And so I think
I would add she said you're beautiful as if she recognized it but didn't understand why. So part of her journey is to understand why this woman is beautiful.
She's starting to understand why she's crying. And she do exactly. Margot Robbie is an A-list actress for a reason. She had the inflection of you're beautiful, not like you're beautiful. There's a different inflection of you're beautiful. Yeah. Why am I reacting this way? And then the woman's response is perfect. I know. Shows her own it from a place. I am beautiful. I've lived a life. I've lived a life. And so that to me is the clear journey for her. And Greta and Heath, you're not alone. Greta Gerwig said executives at one of us to take this out. Take this out. And she said, no, I don't know why I'm making this movie if I take this out.
And I'm just going to make one little I want to make one little comment in favor of sometimes there's things in movies or stories that aren't perfectly structured. They're not perfectly done, or they're not done in a traditional way, and yet they work. And I think my biggest rule is you can do anything. It has to work as long as it works. And I think
it redefines the rules then. Now you know the rules have a bigger parameter than you realized.
And it's also the themes too, because there's the character arc, but there's also like the thematic arc, so to speak, and then that is really important for the theme of the story, which is I think why Greta was saying it was so important.
Well, I'm glad she kept it in, and it may not have had a traditional payoff and set off. It may set up and payoff. It may not have had a perfect arc in a traditional sense, but this is a scene that worked, and I think a studio or anyone judging this in terms of if it's good has to be able to recognize that the scene still works, and it looks like they did. They kept it in.
Yeah, all I know is I cried in the scene. That's all I know. That film review, you want that. All I know is I cried. I had a visceral emotional reaction of my grandmother. And every time I think about it, it brings up those emotions. There's something about that that's working. If that's working, that's what you want in a movie. So let's keep moving forward. Boom. So now what happens is Barbie and Ken split up story-wise. They each have their own adventure, right? We've talked about Barbie, so she's going to go off on her adventure in a second. But Ken goes off on his adventure. She literally sends him away. Just go. And he literally keeps looking for permission. Can I go this way? Can I go this way? Because he has no identity of his own. And she's just go and fine. He keeps walking. Notice the brilliance of it. He never stops looking at her, waiting for her permission, right? He walks the whole journey, looking back, hoping she's going to say it was okay to do this. But eventually he does go there. And he goes this way, and he ends up at Century City Mall, which I go to often, which they portray as a center of toxic masculinity, which is very funny because it is the ultimate consumerist mall in LA, right? It's rich people mall, right? And so I go there, and wherever he goes, he sees all these images of men, and it's mythologized because it's today, but you're seeing on the big cameras, seeing Ronald Reagan and Rocky III and all this stuff from the 80s, right? The idea is the 80s. but it's on purpose. All this 80s imagery is because that's the ultimate in masculine macho stuff. You got Arnold Schwarzenegger and Predator and Stallone and Rambo, and you got Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. This is macho times, right? That's what this 80s is. And so he goes there and he's stunned because, and he says this, he's like, wait, there's somebody comes up and asks him for like the time. He's like, wait, you want to know do you actually want to know the time? You respect me. Like, in the world, he has such contempt that nobody would even ask him for the time. He's considered such a dullard in his world. And so
invisible.
He immediately sees the basic human interactions as giving him a dignity he never had, which starts puffing up his ego. Right? And he starts thinking this patriarchy is kind of cool because I don't feel bad about myself for the first time. People are making me feel good about myself, right? And so he's on that journey. And then why don't we take a moment to talk about that, and we'll talk about where Barbie goes.
It's so childlike. I feel like that goes back to the idea that these two characters are like, a little boy and a little girl, because like his approach to patriarchy is like a child's,
Well, it's a caricature of patriarchy.
Huh?
It's a caricature of patriarchy. It's not the stuff you read about in schools. It's this silly version of it. Like you said, they took an 80s theme and blended in. They took
it's his view of it. It's what he thinks it is. It's from his perspective, I think, at that moment.
And I got a kick out of it. I found myself laughing at the whole thing. I don't think I got offended by any of it. I found it to be hysterical and rather entertaining to see this caricature of patriarchy kind of built out in the film.
Well, and let's just address the elephant in the room about patriarchy, because again, people have been saying, it's about the patriarchy, feminists. They say at the end that patriarchy isn't real, which, I mean,
yes,
even put
very
words,
explicitly.
It's clear for the movie it's not real, but just in case some fool doesn't get it, they say at the end the patriarchy is made up. So I'm like, did you guys watch this movie? Were you listening to it? Just because they knew some of you wouldn't get it, they had it in dialogue.
Totally. This is playtime patriarchy. Yeah. This is, if you're playing with dolls and this is what the patriarchy would look like in this world as you might understand it for the purposes of playtime. That's how I took it. And it didn't bother me at all.
Yeah. And so now let's talk for a second, unless Heath, you want to talk about Ken at all at this stage, and we can move on to Barbie.
No, please go. Yeah.
All right. So now so he's on this silly adventure, which is laugh out loud funny, right? Of learning, finally finding powers as an emasculated, penisless dude to discovering his macho-ness, right? And so he's off there, and he sees stuff I haven't even seen in LA, like dudes walking around with mink coats and whatever. Like, I mean, they're basically like 70s pimps from Times Square, right? in Century City. It's a joke, right? It's not real. Not actually what's happening in Century City, but whatever. He's like, he sees the cool mink of the pimp. It's cool, right? So he's off doing that. And then Barbie, her purpose, and she had this vision while she was sitting at the bus stop, trying to connect with a little girl that has been playing with her, that has caused her disruption. And she sees all these images of a little girl that we see that is initially a beautiful child having fun, playing with the Barbies. But then we watch in those visions, the child gets older, becomes a teenager, no longer wants to play with the Barbie. And we can tell, even though we don't see the mother's face yet, we see that she's being cold and isolated from her mother, who was trying to hug her like a teenager. Don't touch me. Stay away, right? I need my space, right? And we see that, and it culminates with her throwing her Barbie in a Goodwill box to give away, and we just see the mother's hand take the Barbie out. Like, the mother still wants this Barbie. So now she's like, all right, I think I figured out who this girl is, because she saw a high school or junior high school name. So she goes to junior high school there, and she shows up, and she finds the little girl that was in her vision, right? And she comes right up to her, dressed as Cowboy Barbie, right? Pink Barbie, and is so excited. She's like, I'm here to, I'm your favorite woman. I'm Barbie. Yeah. I saved the world. I gave you all these rights as a woman. Don't you love me? I'm here to save you. I did everything.
The corporate brand. I did all these things.
Yeah. a woman can be president now, even though the United States has never had a female president, right? It's commentary, right? And all this stuff, right? Even Barbie didn't open that door, right? And what is the response of the little girl? Played brilliantly by Ariana Greenblatt. She's this obnoxious 12, 13-year-old girl who thinks she knows everything, has like read like The Complete Idiot's Guide to Marx, and starts quoting all this social Marxist made up stuff, right? About how she represents the power structure and white savior and this and that. It's just words, just dumb mantras that a young kid, frankly, a lot of people using these mantras are at that level of intellect. They don't understand what they're saying. I read Das Kapital. You don't know what you're in Oppenheimer, there's a great scene where Oppenheimer, like, this girl tries to tell him this, all these Marxists in the university setting, they're all trying to convince Oppenheimer to join the Communist Party, and they're all these limousine liberal Marxists drinking champagne, and this girl who ends up becoming his lover starts telling him, well, Marx said this. He's like, no, he didn't say that. He said this. He's like, oh, you clearly don't understand Marx. He's like, oh, I read it in German, right?
He says it like an apology because she's like correcting him on what word he's using, and he says, "Oh, sorry, I read it the original."
Yeah. Exactly. He's like, "That's not what it is. I read it in German," and that's his kind of thing. Is this little girl spouting stuff, and it's very hurtful to Barbie because she says the critique of Barbie out loud. The critique of Barbie, the people said, Barbie, you have been terrible for girls. You have given girls and women a false body image. You've made them feel bad about themselves. You've taught them that everything is easy in this world. They can just become president of the United States, and that still hasn't happened. You basically were used by the patriarchy to lull us into a sense of complacency. That's an actual critique made by certain feminists of the Barbie toy phenomenon, that socially damaged girls. So this little teenage girl says all that, and Barbie starts crying because it's hurtful. She's never been criticized in her entire life. She's a princess.
Not only criticized, it's the exact opposite of the self-image she's carried her whole life. She's always this icon. Now it's like you're the exact opposite of that. You're the worst thing ever. You're the worst thing for girls. I mean, that's an exact opposite identity that this girl's telling her. And one of the notes I wrote was, this movie, I was like, it does like Twitter feeds. It's almost like they read a Twitter feed on anyone's thoughts on Barbie, the good and the bad. They picked out the 20 most common ones, and they added everyone got their say about Barbie in this, the good and the bad. And that was the brutal, scathing judgment of Barbie, which maybe there's kernels of truth in it, but I would say the most extreme in terms of the negative.
It's interesting because every comment I feel like in here, all the different perspectives in this movie are all at that level of exaggeration. Like they're all at that level of way over the top. Even the ones that seems the movie is saying are the opinions of the movie, they're still said in that same kind of a tone of just like, it's so grandiose, it's so it's all on that same note, and so it's things are being equally made fun of, I think.
Well, but that's a testament to the storyteller, because she's not taking a side necessarily. She's taking the side of Barbie. She's taking the side of Ken in terms of their character and their character arcs. And I think that's what a writer's supposed to do. I don't think if you start with message and try to write, your story's going to sound like that, and it's going to sound like crap. And you're going to turn people off because people are going to sense the inauthenticity of the characters. And ultimately, people respond to characters. And I think this movie works because all of us, myself included, reacted to Barbie and Ken as characters, the human condition.
Yeah. So let's now get to structure, because a pivotal event now happens. Now it's essentially the midpoint of the movie. And we've had two things happen. We've had Barbie shaken up with her sense of herself, losing her confidence, right? And Ken suddenly being given this bravado of being in this macho world that he imagines, right? So they both flipped personalities. Where Ken was subservient and Barbie was super confident, they have now flipped. And guess what happens at this moment? We now end in midpoint of the movie, just like the story structure I teach in my writing classes. We now enter the liminal phase. We go to Mattel. We go to the Mattel land.
Well, we go to Mattel, and doesn't Ken go back to Barbie land?
Yes, but we're going to get to that, right? So now they're going to split into different. We first go to Mattel.
Two liminal phases.
Yeah, we first go to Mattel. No, actually, no. This is the central liminal phase. Everything is a consequence thereof. We first go to Mattel. We're first introduced to Mattel, where we see this massive like skyscraper, because we see normal Century City, mall that's normal, and then we cut to this incredible, like, imaginary, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy futuristic skyscraper, right? That goes off into the sky forever, which is Mattel, right? It's an invincible corporate phenomenon. We go in there and we see all the workers are in these gray cubicles, right? Someone pointed this out to me, and I believe it's right, because I talked about the level of detail that Greta Gerwig does. So somebody pointed out me the color of the gray cubicles in which all the workers, essentially slave workers, and they're all men, by the way. They're all men working the cubicles, right? So they're all these slave workers in the cubicles. The color gray is the exact shade that Stanley Kubrick used for the obelisk.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
That's
the monolith
specificity.
from 2001.
Yeah, and so it sees a similar enough shade that she's intentionally bringing us back to the metallic, otherworldliness of this world, right? Because we've taken out
monolithic culture.
Exactly. We've gone from the extreme vibrant brightness of Barbie Land to the normal color palette of our world, which is not as bright. Barbie Land is exaggerated, but it's colorful, to a completely gray, empty world, right? Which is futuristic. And again, an homage to Stanley Kubrick, as some people have claimed, and I think that's probably true, because nothing she does is by accident, right? Because the entire Mattel is gray cubicles. So you have these slave workers in there, and basically the FBI calls one of the slave workers and says, Barbie's on the loose in the real world, and this is disrupting reality. You need to take care of this.
Ridiculous.
He's like,
The FBI.
I've got to tell the CEO, right? And and he's at the bottom of the pyramid of this corporate structure. And everyone's like, no, you can't go to the CEO. It's like going up to God, the burning bush. You can't go there, right? You have to. The world will end if Barbie remains in it. So he goes. And the funny thing is he's got to go. He's got to go all the way to the top, which is where the CEO is. And everyone's like, no one goes all the way to the top, right? And so he daringly presses the elevator button that says all the way to the top, and he goes, right? Yeah. And he comes out, and who does he meet? We finally, now midpoint of this movie, we meet America Ferrera. We now meet her in this liminal world, who we will discover is the mother of this tween girl. And she is what? She is the executive assistant to the CEO. And her job is to keep people like this out of the corporate boardroom, right? And what we see is she is drawing images of Barbie in her, like she's doodling. And we recognize those are the images of Barbie that we've seen, like the costumes that we see Barbie wearing. She's drawing them, right? And so, like, how is she doing this, right? What is her relationship? And then, I forgot what this guy's name was. The slave worker. He barges his way in, and suddenly we see the one place that's sort of bright pink light inside of Mattel, which is the boardroom. This heart-shaped board, all men sitting around it, right? With Will Ferrell as the CEO, talking about how to make more money, and then he comes in, and guess what? Here's an analogy. He comes in, he's like, yeah, you can't be in here. You're a slave and a peon. Go back to your cubicle, right? He's like, no, I have something very important to tell you. He's like, well, you can't tell me. Send me an email. I was like, no, it's too important to send an email. I got to tell you. Well, you can whisper it to me. And so they literally do a game of telephone where he has to whisper it to low-level executives, and the whisper.
I thought it was going to be the wrong thing at the end. But
yeah, like the game of telephone.
We don't even know. We don't know how it came at the game. We never hear it. All we see is Will Ferrell's reaction. But guess what? Guess who that guy is? He's Ken. Will Ferrell is Barbie. That slave worker is Ken. Do you see that? He's not even allowed to talk.
He's the accessory.
It's a caste system. He can't talk to the Brahmin. He's an untouchable. He's not even allowed to talk to him, right? And so there is an analogy. In the human world, we degrade people based on status. Where's the lesson in that, right? And then Will Ferrell freaks out at Barbie in the real world. We have to get her back to Barbie Land, or some unknown thing is going to happen that will end the world that they never explained. You don't need to because it's fun, right? And so now we know he orders them, go get Barbie back in the box, right? And so now we return to this place where Ken and Barbie meet again. And Ken is so excited because he's seeing a world where it's the patriarchy and it's cool. And she's paying no attention to him while she's like, this girl doesn't love me. And then suddenly, guess who comes to help her out in the middle of her despair? These suits from Mattel show up in a van, a gray van, show up and say, Ms. Barbie, why don't you come with us? We can solve your problem, right? Right. And there's something sinister about that. Think about it. A little girl, what are we told, little children? Don't get into the van with a strange man.
Stranger danger.
Stranger danger. And she even asks, wait, who are you? Should I be going with you? Oh, you're Mattel. Okay, I can trust Mattel because Mattel is essentially her god, right? You're taking me back to
We
Valhalla.
have common cause.
Yeah, okay, great. You're taking me back to Eden, Mattel, right? You're taking me to meet God, essentially. Great. And she gets in, and while at the same time, she's off to Mattel to go to the liminal world, whereas Ken decides, you know what? The patriarchy, because we have these funny sequences where Ken tries to do the patriarchy in this world. Like he goes to a doctor's office and they won't let him be a doctor. He goes to, tries to do all these things, but they're, and they won't let him do the things that he's supposed to do as a man automatically. He's got to get an MBA. He's got to get a degree. He's got to learn. He doesn't want to do
And then
anything.
he learns there's not even the job of beach.
You're right.
Yeah, he can't even. There's no job. He's not even allowed to just be a beach guy, which is what he is. And so finally, he's resentful that the patriarchy isn't what he, as a child, imagined it to be. But he thinks, where could this work? Let me bring it back to Barbie Land that doesn't have any concept of patriarchy, and I'll start there. And so he's off to take this idea into Barbie Land while she's off doing her thing. So let's talk about this interesting middle point moment where all this is happening.
I have 2 comments I really want to mention about this.
Okay. Stray says, when I came out of the hospital and everyone missed me, I felt warm, one of the cool geeks. And we're so glad to have you back, Stray. We are. We're so glad to have you back and that you are here. Sable Phoenix also has a comment to hold until the end of the panel. So we'll keep going. All right, go for it, Brianna.
First of all, I just, full pun intended, I think it's really ballsy of Mattel to let themselves be portrayed that way in this movie. Like with.
Good for them.
Oh,
I know,
they're
right?
Like confident. They're mocked throughout this movie, and they're going with it, and that's going to make them sell more toys.
So props to them with that. And then secondly, there's something really interesting. I was listening to, pretty funny, another panel similar to ours about this in the sense that it was 1 woman and 3 guys. But it's I'm never make sure I name them specifically. Beyond the Screenplay. There's a YouTube channel called Beyond the Screenplay. I was watching their analysis of this, and one of them mentioned something that I thought was worth bringing in here that was really cool. The fact that there's a return to Barbie Land so soon is kind of interesting, because you would expect in a normal hero's journey that you would have, that would be more towards the end, that you're leaving the ordinary world and you're going on all these adventures, and then you're coming.
I have a thought on that when you're done.
Yes, and I'd be curious to know what you think. But one of the people there, I don't remember who it was, pointed out was that it has to do with the kind of the appeal of the movie, like what's being sold is that we want to be in Barbie Land. Like it's almost disappointing when you go to the real world in the movie, because like that's not why you're here. You're here to watch the the experiences in this other fantasy world. And so they have to bring it back, and the way to do that is to send Ken back first, so that the problems that are being dealt with in the ordinary world are then going to be dealt with in Barbie Land. And so I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of fix that. The story is still continuing, right? The problems they're facing are still there, so that way we can spend more time in the most fun setting of the movie.
Well, that's when the movie's at its best. So I mean, I agree with that. And the movie clearly wanted to be in Barbie world, and I mean, I talked about that on the show and stuff like that. The movie's I think it's best there, and so
it's fun. It's fun. It's playtime, and so structurally, I found it interesting because the first half of the movie clearly mirrors the hero's journey. The idea of you leave the native culture, you're called away from the call to adventure. You try to refuse the call, but you end up accepting it. You enter this liminal space. You go into what's called the underworld, which is bizarre and dangerous. And they say all the characters are in a fragile state of truce in this world, but
which is our world. Which is our world.
Which is our world. Yeah, that's the underworld. But the second half follows some of the tropes from the Heroine's Labyrinth, which is
I thought about that. This is the broken truce. The broken truce is when the native culture turns against the heroine, which clearly happens in this. The native culture is completely under the spell of Ken and turns against Barbie at this point. He goes to great lengths to try to minimize her, to accessorize her. Every night's guys' night. How does it feel? Which I thought was a pretty impactful moment in the film. I thought that was an extremely.
He's like, "How does it feel?" And I was like, "Ooh,
yes,
yeah."
because it got turned on her.
Well, they actually even said that directly. You have America Ferrera, who because we'll get to how she gets back, America Ferrera and the daughter go back with Barbie back to Barbie Land, and they discover it's now been turned into Kendom, right? It's been transformed to this hyper macho, imaginary super male dominant
6-year-old
world, right?
boys version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, the icky girls are going to listen to me now, right? So but she says it directly with a funny joke when she says, this is just like the poor indigenous peoples of the Americas who had no resistance to smallpox, right? Because they had no previous experience.
No defense for it.
No defense for it. It is talking about the betrayal of the natives. That's what that is.
The native culture. Yeah.
They say it. That's the genius of Greta Gerwig. She says everything in case you didn't get it. She said it in case you didn't understand the symbolism. I'm going to say it.
Yeah, well, but she does show it and then says it.
Which I think it and says it just for the other people that aren't going to get it.
Sometimes when you're in a bizarre world like this, though, that works, that little extra comment to help you digest what you've just seen. And this world is bizarre and cool and fun and wacky enough to where maybe, the extra commentary helps. But also home is battleground. The hero's journey, usually the battle takes place far from home. And in the second half of Barbie, the battleground is home. So it's in her house, her physical house, Barbie's dream house. So there are elements, and this is why I think this is heroine-centric themes, because even when it comes down to Barbie's final showdown and where does it all take place? In her native culture, in her dream home. It's right there. The masked minotaur is someone that she used to trust. This is a person who's a member of her native culture, not a militant outsider. So there are aspects in the second half which do follow heroine centric archetypes, which I just structurally, it's very weird. It starts as a hero's journey and then returns to kind of settle into more heroine centric conflict.
Again, because we're dealing with a genius master storyteller that's on purpose. Right? Because this is a movie about men and women. It is not a movie about women. It is not a movie about misandry and disrespecting men. It is a movie about men and women. That's why I, as a toxic male, conservative Muslim guy, can be laughing and crying throughout this movie, right?
Because you think you're a toxic male?
Yeah, well,
male, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Well, but there's something
I'm Kenough the way I am.
Kenough. Well, there's something about somebody said, I think on YouTube, that authenticity is the currency of the 21st century in a world of social media and everything else. And this movie, even though it carries these themes or ideas, let's say, of more extreme or ideological positions, there's a certain honesty, like girls' locker room talk, even, the way they make fun of guys, the way they tease guys, it's so honest that it was very unself-conscious the way they did it. And I think that as a guy, I can appreciate that. Any girl who's ever liked you teases harsh on you. They make fun of you. They call you out. They do this. That's the level I took it at. It's like, oh man, they got us.
It's not done out of disrespect or anything like that at all. I think
no malice.
It's quite the opposite.
There's no malice, and which makes me. I hate being so blunt, but it's just like, if someone is still taking issue with it, that reflects like an insecurity. Like if you're watching this movie and it's like you're feeling attacked, like to me it's like you're not
triggering something yourself. No, absolutely. It's triggering something inside of you. That's been why I've been so rather cruel to the critics of this, and I've been so blunt. People are like, hey, Cameron's a bit of a jackass, Cameron. I'm like, I'm doing it on purpose because what it's revealed to me when people, people can initially have a different take on this movie, but when they resist hearing what we're saying, then that's because there's something deep inside of them that's deeply threatened by maturation of male-female dynamic, right? And that's
or just
I don't like.
They don't want to mature.
Like an unwillingness to take a second look. I think that's what always bothers me. If there's an if you're hearing these alternative perspectives, you should take a second look. You should be capable of changing your position. Like I said, I went into this completely prepared to argue the exact opposite points.
You sent me a message. I got my notes. I'm ready to tear this apart. I'm like, I know it's going to happen. And it's exactly.
Well, I had a framework in my head where I thought I was going to be, so I was preemptively setting that up, and then within minutes, I realized that was going to go. I shouldn't say minutes; it probably took about 20 minutes, but I was like, "Shoot, I'm laughing, I'm enjoying this, I'm thoroughly entertained." My wife, who does not like messaging in her films, she's laughing, and I noticed a lot of the women laugh. And Cameron, I'm curious, and if you think this is possible. This movie, like I said a couple times, this was play space. This was fun, yes, honest, authentic play space with whatever messages. It didn't matter. They all were subordinate to the play. Do you think that Barbie is a Star Wars type moment culturally for the ladies?
I mean, the evidence is there. It's a blockbuster. It is the biggest blockbuster we've had in years. The evidence is with your own eyes. Is that it is consistently
highest grossing film by a female director in history as of now.
Yeah. Is it really? And it's going to get bigger.
It went out over Wonder Woman. Yep.
It grossed 15 million yesterday. I know.
Yeah. So highest opening weekend, and it's projected to be the highest. I don't know.
So people are talking about the numbers keep going higher. I've been generally pretty prescient on the numbers. I knew when people said it's not going to make more than 150, I said it's going to make more than 150. And when the first weekend was winding down, people said it's not going to make more than 160. It's winding down. I said, no, it's going to make more than 160. And I was right, 162. And then I said, it's going to make at least 90 next weekend, 94 next weekend, right? And so my expectation for next week is at least 50, probably going to do more than that, right? And so we're seeing about a 40 to 45% drop. That's insane. Every week. That's insane. Awesome. And so you are looking at and the numbers keep rising because of it. Originally projected, people were saying to me 1 week ago, whatever, it did well this weekend, it ain't going to make $1 billion. Now the projections are 1.6 billion 1 week later. It's going to go to 2 billion. It's going to go to 2 billion. Why do you think
that is, by the way, Cameron? Do you think there's like sexism involved in that? Because I feel like often women-centric movies, people expect it to perform. Do you think that's why, or do you think there's other things?
Well, they've said this trope, Brianna. They've said this. I've seen this. People say, female-oriented movies, are front-loaded because I guess women just go in for the cool of the first weekend to hang out with their girlfriends, and then that's it, right? And they use examples like Twilight or whatever. That's the thing. This isn't a female-oriented movie. This is a humanity movie. That's why it's working.
That's what I'm saying. As a man, I understand play space. I understand that, whether it's action figures that I used to play with as a kid. So I recognize that in this film. I recognize the freedom of that play space and that silliness and that fun. And I think that what made this movie work is they doubled down on that fun. And I think all of us recognized it. And you don't have to be a girl to appreciate this whatsoever.
Yeah. Which is how it should be. And I find that so inspiring too. Like, I just want to say, like, as a storyteller myself, like, and Cameron, you said before, you think I kind of have the role of what was it that you say? Like, where you're just someone that is saying things very aggressively, so to speak, like when you're calling out things that are a problem.
Well, you've
got some chutzpah.
You have chutzpah. You're a catalyst figure. That's what you are. You're a catalyst. You speak truths and you change things.
And that's something I'm very passionate about as a storyteller, is one, being able to do that, but two, doing it in a way that brings everyone in. And that's not easy to do. I'm still like trying to learn how to do that. Like the people that if I'm critiquing something, I want to make sure that if the critique is landing on someone, they're still able to watch and listen and enjoy and not feel attacked and feel welcomed in. And like the humanity of, it's like good stories are supposed to connect us as humans. That's ultimately what they should do. And this movie does that. And so I'm inspired. And it's so funny. It's like, it's a Barbie movie. It's so weird
it's
that
not just a
only
Barbie
Greta
movie.
Gerwig could make it so, make it so genius and so human. It's cinema. Like, it's amazing.
Let me say this. So I live in Austin, and we have Alamo Drafthouse everywhere. I don't know where else.
That's where I watched it. I watched it in Alamo here in New York.
Alamo. Okay, Alamo Drafthouse. I always get there 30 minutes early because they create these custom 30-minute like clips that pertain to the movie. So it's all this like pop culture backwater stuff that they all put on there. And while I was watching the 30 minutes to lead up to Barbie, I was kind of blown away. I guess as a guy, I just didn't know the totality of what Barbie was in terms of pop culture, even before the movie. They were showing the commercials from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, Paula Abdul did something with Barbie, some sort of song that she was involved in there. Huge in the, I think, 80s, right? Yeah, Paula Abdul was 80s, like late 80s. There's all these dancers and all these kids, and there was TV shows with Barbie, and there was news anchors talking, and I was like, man, Barbie is bigger than I ever thought it was. So all of that gravity and weight was waiting to be just detonated. And I feel like this did that,
Well, so I've got about 10 minutes left. So why don't we
continue?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to the end of the movie. Let's go to the lesson. Right? We skipped over some of
right.
how America. So very quickly, America Ferrera and her daughter joined Barbie to go back into Barbie land, right? And then they discover that Ken has taken over and essentially turned it upside down, where the world is now Kendom, where the Kens rule, and the Barbies are essentially brainwashed into being happily subservient 1950s housewives, there to serve you food, to listen to you mansplain to you and music and all this stuff. And it's very, 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 very funny. It's very funny, right? So, but how do they get out of this? So they're like, well, how do we resolve this issue? And they don't know how to fix this. And Barbie starts despairing, right? She doesn't know how to do this. And because she still hasn't learned the purpose of life, and the little teenage girl reminds both her mom and Barbie that the purpose of being human is to not despair. That even if all you do is make the world a little bit better, you try. You have to try, right? And then finally, the little girl figures that out and inspires them. And then that causes America Ferrera, who's so exhausted by all of this, I hear this from my sister all the time. I'm just so tired. I mean, it's the most common phrase they hear from women. I'm just so tired. And then they have a long litany of all the things that have made them tired. And they're all valid, right? I got a lot of stuff I'm tired about too, but I don't do we guys don't do litany. We do internal monologue on that, but women love to litany this stuff. And so she does the great litany speech of all the reasons she's tired of being a woman, all the injustices of life, right? And I think women really identified. I was watching the audience twice that I've seen it. Women were like freaking out during that speech. They're like, yeah, that's my litany too of all the reasons it's hard to be a woman in this world. But guess what? In that litany of things, she also says, it's okay to just be a mom. And why do I have to be pressured to always have to be a corporate mom? Why can't I just be a mom? It's all of the balance of range of things, right? And when she says this litany of the struggles of being a woman, which are authentic, it's a lie to say women don't feel these things. I don't give a crap how much of a manosphere, men's rights activist you are. Women do feel these things, whether you like it or not. It's authentic. I know because I hear my sister say these litanies. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry going through this, right? Okay, I'm just going to listen, right? I'm going to try to solve your problem. I'm just going to listen. Shut up. I learned after many years as a guy. Shut up and listen, right? You learn after all. Just, okay, fine. I'm not going to try to solve your problem. You don't want me to solve your problem. Fine, whatever. So she just litanies. But what that does is the litany of the struggles of being a woman wakes up the Barbies out of their brainwashing. And then they have this very hilarious thing where they have to do this complex thing of how to distract the Kens while they essentially kidnap each Barbie and litany her over the struggles of being a woman. And she wakes up, right? And the end result of that, because the Ken and the Kens were going to get together, and because the Barbies were all hypnotized, the Kens were about to change the constitution of Barbie Land to make it Kendom forever, where the Kens rule. But what they do, and this is true on a very visceral level, how do the waking up Barbies distract the Kens from holding the great vote? They make them jealous. Like the Kens are all singing at them this wonderful song, Matchbox Ready, I'm gonna push you down. It's a great song, right? Just singing at them at the beach. But then what does Barbie do? She gets up and goes to his rival Ken and likes his version of the song better. And suddenly that brings out,
jealousy.
Ryan Gosling, Ken's insecurities and jealousies, and the Kens divide into two camps over the women, and they go into a battle while the women go off and let the men go fight it out. And the fight is what? It's with people throwing plastic arrows at each other. It's fun.
And then they go into like a dance battle.
They do a dance thing that's like from West Side Story. They erupt into a dance off, right? And it's hilarious. And the whole time they've completely forgotten they had to go change the Constitution, and the women go and they bring back the Constitution to Barbie Land, whatever, and all that. And that's the thing. But it doesn't end there. It ends with, okay, everything's been restored to normal, and Ken, is sad because he's lost all these privileges that he had. But then he finally admits, I wasn't really happy with patriarchy. When I realized it was more than horses, I got bored. I didn't want the responsibility of like leadership and decision making. I didn't want any of that. But he doesn't know what to do without Barbie. And she finally says to him something that's very pivotal. She realizes as he opens his heart to her how badly she hurt him when she took him for granted, and she apologizes to him. And like, we're like, it's a Miss Andrews movie. She says, "I'm sorry, I mistreated you as a man. I'm sorry." She says it. She says, "I'm sorry," and you have to.
It's very sincere.
Yeah, it's from the heart. You said she was heartbroken because of the thing that you pointed out, where he had said earlier, "How does it feel now that I'm in charge and you can't have your house, you can't be with us? How does it feel?" It's brilliantly executed line by Ryan Gosling. It's a, "You did this to me. Now you know what pain is." And she and Margot Robbie is deeply hurt by that. Great actress. And she apologizes. But the movie still doesn't end there, because we finally have this character that we met in Mattel, this old woman played by Rhea Perlman, who's this mysterious old woman. And then you discover, spoiler alert, that she's actually the original creator of Ruth Handler, who created Barbie. She created Barbie, and she's the ghost of that woman. And Barbie doesn't know where she belongs in. And she gives.
I got a kick out of Will Ferrell's comment. Yeah, we have a room for the ghost on the 14th floor. Like, this is normal.
But great thing about Will Ferrell's character is it's revealed he loves Barbie as a CEO. He loves Barbie. He wants to keep selling Barbies to little girls. He's not a bad guy, right? He just in fact, he's shocked that the masculine Ken, dolls are selling more than Barbie, and he doesn't even care about that. Yeah, exactly. And so it's.
No, he wants to stop that, though. That's why he goes to Barbie World.
Yeah, he wants to stop
exactly, because he's like, it's not the way it should be. Barbie is what makes our company. So he's not about
Ken-centric,
Yeah, he's like, I'm here for the little girls, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's very heartfelt. And then finally, Ruth has this wonderful conversation with Barbie about what it means to be human, culminating in those images. And at the very end, Barbie making the choice of, "I choose to be human," right? And then
that was the part that got me emotional.
That's the part that my friend said she started crying. She started crying, right? And again, I got it. I mean, I'm a man, and I'm watching these images of a little girl growing to old age, and like home video of that. It touched me deeply. And then we return to have our final jokes in the material world, where now that she's physically human, she has to deal with it. Now she's got a body. And the final joke is she goes to an OBGYN for the first time.
You think she's going to like a job interview or something?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly, it's all made to look like she's here. "Are you here for your appointment?" And you think it's for a job interview. It's like, "I'm here to meet my gynecologist." And again, the
He's
dumb
so
people
excited about it.
"You can't have a movie about gynecology in Barbie." I was like, of course you can, because she finally has body parts. How can you not do that joke? Of course you have to do that joke. That's set up and payoff. Barbie doesn't have a body parts. How can you not do that joke when she has body parts? It's natural, and it's so funny, and we go to black on that, right? And so that's the movie.
Even the credits, though, show all this like home footage through the years. And again, that struck that intergenerational chord of playing with Barbies, whether you were in the 60s, like my mom, 80s and 90s, like girls or women in my generation, or all the way through to today. It really hit that point, that nostalgia, or that idea that this is an intergenerational phenomenon, even in the credits.
Well, before Cameron has to go, Sable Phoenix asks a question to hold until the end of the panel. This film is a cultural phenomenon. It's a given. After this discussion, do you think that it will help people understand each other more and bridge the divide?
I think if people are coming to it. What's that?
Let's ask everybody else, right? Yeah.
I think if people are coming to it like with that sort of genuine openness, I think so, because it is such a human movie. It is, like we were saying already, like it's not combative. It's not anti-men. A coworker told me that before I watched it. He's like, "I heard it's anti-men," and I was like, "I bet it's not." And sure enough, it's not. But I think some people are always going to be resistant to the kinds of just topics that this sort of a movie talks about, and so there's just some people just aren't really going to be reached, and that's okay. That's all. It's always going to be like that. But I think overall, I would assume so. Yeah.
I agree with you, Brianna. I think it will. It's new. This is new. This is a new space that men and women are moving into culturally, where we can watch this movie, even with all these competing messages all included in it. And the reason I compared it to like a Star Wars moment is because like that's like Star Wars is the perfect guy play space, right? You know, you have the bad guy. Like here's a different play space, and I feel like we can all come together in this space too. You want to make fun of guys, and like I even got, you know, when they're singing the guitar thing, those smoldering looks they were giving all the Barbies and things like that. Like that's funny to me. I can laugh at that.
Because we guys do stupid things to try
to.
We do. We do because we don't know how to do it. That's the joke. We don't have an instruction manual how to interest women. We don't know how to do it. We just don't. So we learn through trial and error.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, this is a little something new. This is a new space we can all come into. And I think that it's a cultural phenomenon for a reason. And I expect this film to do really, really well all the way through. And sell toys, something that Disney and Marvel can't do anymore.
Well, you personally, to my knowledge, Mattel's never made a movie before. It's the first movie. And now they're going to explode. They're going to become a powerhouse in Hollywood, right? And if they're smart, they're going to get people like Gerwig and Baumbach and people of that caliber. They won't get a Rian Johnson who's going to try to deconstruct their stuff, right? They're just going to get smart people who will tell Hot Wheels stories, He-Man stories, all that stuff, right? And actually do it right. And so, you know, with regard to this question here, I want to go back to what Brianna said, because I think Brianna's right. You know, I think this is going to connect most people. You know, the cultural divide that's going to create, frankly, and it's going to be a divide, is between normal people and weirdos. It's as simple as that. I mean,
yeah.
Normal people and weirdos who have weird pathologies about men and women, self-esteem issues, bizarre ideological stuff that just can't enjoy a kid. You know, it's not a kid's movie, but can't enjoy a fun movie, right? I mean, it's going to create that bizarre. I mean, the fringe, who I think a lot of people, you know, as I've said a lot on my Patreon, a lot of these fringe weirdos had a moment in the sun during the last, 7-8 years where they were accidentally aligned with normal people because normal people didn't like where Star Wars was going or Star Trek and other stuff because it was so blatantly bad and stupid, and that normal people said, I don't like this stuff, but they didn't know how to express it. And they went to YouTube, and these fringe weirdos were also sharing that opinion in at channels. But now these fringe weirdos have revealed themselves to be fringe weirdos, right? And, their opinion is so disconnected from reality, in my opinion. And so disconnected from the audience that a lot of people are just like, and they're saying to people are saying that to me on my Patreon. I was like, I've stopped watching this channel, that channel, because I realized, man, this guy's an idiot, right? This person's an idiot. It's not just a guy. I've seen popular women YouTubers who are not, in my opinion, well known for their intellect any more than these guys are, but they're like going with the crowd. As a woman, I have to say, I'm horrified by how they treat it. I was like, you're just going with the crowd of your contingency, right? But you just put yourself in the fringe of weirdos, and eventually that money's going to run out. And this is a major cultural moment where the pendulum has swung from sort of far right deconstruction of story, and a lot of the people pushing against that were weirdos on far left, and the weirdos on the far right who wanted to take it to really stupid, unsophisticated storytelling that they could understand. And people stopped in the middle. They stopped. The pendulum stopped at Barbie and said, yeah, this works for us. And then these idiots kept going further and further right? Saying, I don't want any nuance. I don't want any symbolism. I need it fed to me straightforwardly. Well, she did say all the stuff. Well, I need her to say it even more clearly than she said it. She said the patriarchy is not real. I need it to be even clearer than that, right? I don't want to see a scene even making fun of the patriarchy because I'm not smart enough to understand it's a joke, right? So more people aren't going that far. I mean, we went one level. We had communist, manifesto weirdos, and then we have these troglodytes, these know-nothings, right? We got these two people who are essentially the enemies of normals, who are just take our fun away. So take our fun away. Normal people. Barbie is the victory of normies, and that's the culture.
The victory of normies.
I have a little mini prediction. I feel like where The Last Jedi was super divisive, where people were like, this is a genius movie. I knew that over time that argument would drop off, and the reality is this is not a good movie would become the thing. That is already happening. Barbie's going to be the exact opposite. As time goes on, the arguments against the film are going to get quieter and quieter and seem more and more like, I still get these stupid things on my Facebook, but like the genius of Rian Johnson. I was like, dude, these people are still trying to sell this movie. they're fading out though. So I think the critics of this movie who are missing the point, I think that will slowly over time weed itself out as this movie cements it. And I think it's going to be a lot quicker than The Last Jedi.
No, you're right, Douglas, because I'm seeing that already. Some of the channels that I saw 1 week ago saying this movie's gonna bomb. This movie's the worst thing to happen to men and women. Look, by the way, I got this actual comment on my Facebook feed, and I had to block this person because it was too much. This person who had not seen the movie commented on my Facebook feed based on these kinds of reviews and said, "This is the most hateful movie since Birth of a Nation." I mean, that's a crazy thing to say.
Nobody genuinely believes that either. Like that's so ridiculous. I just want to say, like,
it's insane. It's too,
and they didn't see it.
Just to add to what you're saying, Cameron.
YouTube after YouTube. He just posted one YouTube review after YouTube review after YouTube review, and I finally said, you know what? Get off my Facebook. I blocked you. Delete all your stuff. I mean, if you're that stupid, we're done, right? But within 1 week, one of the videos that he posted on my thing of like, this is proof. That person has now had a shocked stream yesterday saying, why is this a cultural phenomenon? And this is the person who reacted to Ethan Van Sciver, was kind of startled when Ethan Van Sciver said, I like this movie. They're like, oh, I got to consider that, right? So now we're having these same people realizing that they're not in touch with normies. And that's not good for them.
That's a really interesting point, because one of the things that, of course, Hollywood has been struggling with for a while is the opposite end of like people that are, like you're saying, like this sort of like in your face left wing kind of just preaching at people. And that is something normies don't like. Normal people, like most people, don't like that. But then that's an interesting note, and I hope you're right about that. That like there is this other sort of reaction, because the universe has to balance itself out, right? So you always have your other extreme to balance that out, or people also not in touch, right? Just sort of other extreme. And so hopefully this is a sign that Hollywood is kind of like finally getting to the pulse of what people want, because I feel like that is like this. I wanted to say earlier, like why I think this movie is so popular, and like one of the reasons is it's fun, it's joy. Like that's, people want to go to the movies to have fun. Like it's entertainment. We want to be entertained. We also want it to be meaningful too, and which it is. It's meaningful, but it's the kind of movie that people want to see. It's also the fact that it's an established brand, and it's the fact that we have the talent, the people are going for the actors, and a very effective marketing campaign. So all those four things together is what has created this phenomenon.
And this movie, it's going to get nominated for a bunch of things in the Oscars. Yep. I used to watch the Oscars religiously, but I can spot a big film when it comes out, like set design, costume design, art direction. You might even see
Ryan Gosling, best actor, Margot Robbie, best director. And guess what? This thing gets those nominations. People are watching the Oscars next year. The Oscars
they'll have more views finally.
Cameron, it's the first time that I started really thinking about Oscars in a long time, because I used to love that. I used to love the ability to think, at least I understood this is the kind of excellence that the Academy's Awards wants to honor and celebrate. I used to think I knew that, and sometimes every time I'm right, you're like, I got it. This movie has all those hallmarks that it's going to get nominated for a load of different awards and probably win several. There's probably a best original song in there. It could be a best original screenplay. There's a whole bunch of categories that this film could easily. So what I'm saying is there's another life to this film in March when the Academy Awards comes out again.
It's been a while since we've heard from Heath. Heath, is there anything you want to say about all this?
Have we convinced you, Heath, that you just didn't get this movie? Have we convinced you?
I don't know. I asked my dad. I told him he should take my stepmom to see this movie on a date because she used to collect Barbies and things like that. And he was like, "No, I'm not going to do that. If you want to take her, you should." And I'm like, well, okay. I didn't get to do that this week. I was busy, so I might go see it again. But I was prepared because I would be happy to take her, and I was thinking about seeing it a second time before this, but I didn't actually get to do it this weekend for other reasons. But I was prepared to talk about this in terms of a movie about why it is reaching people for other reasons. Like, okay, this is we talk a lot about plot and story structure on this channel, and that how often if you can't figure out plot, if you can't deal with both plot and story structure, you should sacrifice plot in order to get your story structure right.
Yeah.
We talk about that on the channel, but then I was going to say there's going to be some other layers that when you're communicating, you're talking to people on a certain level, and you're connecting with them on certain levels that a movie might do. It's going to be successful as well. And so I was going to be prepared to talk about that. Well, maybe this didn't do so well structurally, but man, this hits a lot of things in the zeitgeist of the times, what people want to talk about. It is satire. It is doing all those things so well. It communicates what the women who play, because it's not for kids, it's for everyone who had played with Barbie over the past 40 years, and it's addressing issues that they had, and that's why it's doing so well. But it seems like here we're talking about, no, that actually we don't have to talk about those things at all. We're talking about a genius level union of the hero's journey with Doug's heroine's labyrinth. And so where I was thinking, okay, well, maybe the structure here isn't so good, because like by the time the Kens were fighting, I was bored.
Really?
Yeah. By the time the Kens were fighting, I was bored. And
there
was
might be an exception here.
And yeah, so I just may be the exception, because by the time the Kens were fighting, I was going, what is this? And then they go into a dance number, and I was just like, oh my God. So I thought that there was a structural problem with that. But instead, we could have talked about things that go beyond that. But instead, we're talking about a genius level union of the structure that I've missed. So, all right, I'll have to look at that again. I mean,
watch it again. It's worth watching again. We've had some wonderful people in the chat saying, "Hey, I'm going to rewatch this movie now." Right? Sable Phoenix and others. They're like, maybe I would urge you to rewatch it. I mean, I've had people I respect, like my friend Paulie, Latino Slant. He was in earlier. I don't know if he's still watching. You know, he had an initial negative review. One thing I know about Paulie is that he is a man of integrity, and he's re-reviewed things that he didn't like and liked them later, because he's not interested in being dishonest for clicks, and neither are you. So, and you may watch it again and say, I still don't get it. And that's okay, because that's it's art, right? But as long as you're approaching it with an open heart and a desire to understand art, that's honest. What I don't like is dishonesty and projection of bizarro ideologies onto art. And maybe that's not possible to separate, because all art is subjective. All art is projection of inner nature.
Fine if you don't like it. Like, you're allowed to not like it.
I just think you're all stupid, but that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, no, we don't do that here. We don't do that here. We don't do that here.
For sure. You know, there is taste.
Point of view is here. Yes.
Yeah.
But art reaches out and hits that.
Heath looks very tense. I'm sorry I said stupid. Heath looked very tense on me. I'm kidding. Can you guys take a joke? Go watch Barbie. Take a joke. Take a joke. They make jokes in that movie. Don't get all tense and serious. Come on. Yes.
Well, who knows? If I go see it again, I might take my stepmom to see it, and then I would totally do a revised review if warranted on the next morning grind.
Heath.
You know, after that, I would totally do that. Yeah.
Keith, if you take your stepmom, pay attention while you're watching how often she's laughing and reacting to the movie.
Well, no. But see, that has nothing to do with structure. Mine was entirely because I was prepared to go beyond that. And I was listening to a bunch of other women who have been reviewing this film and the kinds of things that they connect with and the kinds of things that they enjoy. And I was really paying attention to the kinds of things that they say. And I'm going, listen, that they hit a lot of things, shall we say, spiritually, or on that with them, because like when I'm talking, when I listen to the positive reviews of women on YouTube about this movie, I have not been listening to a structural breakdown of the story as we do that here on this channel. Like, that's not what I listen to. That's what we do here on this channel. But when I've been listening to the very positive reviews from women, which I was very interested in listening to, it has to do with theme. It has to do with, connection with childhood. It has to do with development into adulthood. It has to do with those things. Yeah, maturation. So I was going to say, okay, if we're going to go beyond structure, we would talk about those kinds of things that I hear a lot of women who love the movie talk about. Say, no, why is that working for them? That's what I would have said. Good.
Because you hit the issue. This is not a traditional structured movies because it is a combination of the traditional hero's journey and the brilliant revelation that Douglas Burton created in understanding and bringing out the hidden truth of the heroine's labyrinth. I don't know that, Greta Gerwig could voice the heroine's labyrinth the way you did. She just intuitively understood it. And that is why the structure changes, because it is changing from a masculine to a feminine story.
And let me just add, I think there's a certain looseness to structure in play space. When I'm playing with my Star Wars figures as a kid, I'm not thinking in terms of a perfect structure. So there's a certain fun silliness to it, a spontaneity. I think that's the word I'm looking for. And I think this movie captured some of that spontaneous structure that just goes with whatever direction your play session takes. So I think structure is slightly de-emphasized in favor of the pleasure of play. And I think this film has some of that. They're just playing. They're playing with Ken and Barbie.
It's the more fun version of Oppenheimer, which does the same thing. Except Oppenheimer is playing with very heavy stuff, right? It's basically what happened.
Oh, I heard it's really all over the place, right?
Yeah, but it's not a linear story, but that's his shtick anyway. He's not a linear filmmaker because he thinks he has something profound to say about time, which I don't know what that is, and I still don't think he knows what that is.
I don't know if he has something profound to say. I think he just likes to play with it. I think it's one of his toys. Time.
Oppenheimer's great.
The only toy he has, right? But in this one, it actually worked. Maybe. It actually worked. His toy worked this time, and it's basically what happens if a bunch. Can I say geeks and nerds? I can't say stupid. Can I say geeks and nerds? It's a movie.
I didn't say you can't say stupid. I didn't say that. Yes, this is the geek verse. This is the geek verse. You can definitely say.
So
geek.
It's about geeks and nerds whose Barbie are atom bombs, and then they're playing with them, and that's a non-linear story as well. It doesn't follow a traditional structure, right?
That one I actually did get. Like I got a little sleepy at one point during Oppenheimer. I kind of need to watch it again because I don't think I completely got it.
I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait.
I may go see it soon if I go see and re-see Barbie. I meant to see it this weekend, but I said things got in the way. So I'm gonna see Oppenheimer. I know that wants to talk about Oppenheimer with me, so I may go see it soon.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie, but it's an example of nerdy adults playing with very dangerous toys, right? And I'm saying that, but I'm not actually joking, because much of the lesson of this movie is the scientists that do not want to face the consequences and the seriousness of the work that they're doing, and they want to project that onto others. Well, the Nazis are doing it too. It turns out the Nazis really weren't doing it because Heisenberg had already sabotaged the Nazi nuclear program. Nobody was developing the bomb except us, so we're competing against nobody except ourselves. So these are scientists that won't face the reality. They're playing with a toy. It's a toy they're playing with, and until the toy kills 200,000 people, and then they have to face that, right? So there's some interesting analogies of a lack of reality, a disconnection from reality that is true in both movies.
I heard there's an amazing scene that when he hears the news that they dropped this thing onto a human, a city, there's like just a close up of his reaction to it, and it kind of recaptures
my favorite part,
the horror of a nuclear detonation, which I think we've lost, and we could talk about this separately, but
we'll get back together on Oppenheimer. Maybe we need to get together on Oppenheimer. Go ahead, Doug. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either, but I think
the genius of it is it's all on his reactions and his imagination, because he wasn't present. They didn't even tell him when they did it, right? He wasn't present, and he learned about it when everybody else found out about it through Truman's broadcast. And then his imagination of what that was, because he wasn't there to see it. And then that's when he finally wakes up to what he's done. He's been in a dreamland the whole movie until he starts imagining what he did to people.
That part is so well done. That's
my God.
That's the part I'd want to talk about the most.
That's a hell of a thing.
Okay, I'll go see it, and then we'll try to bring everybody back together for that.
Looks like we have another super chat.
Oh, we do. Sable Phoenix says liminal space and playtime. Okay, well, okay, hold on. We'll go back to you, Sable. Hold on. Do you need to get here, Cameron?
No, I want to hear the super chat thing.
Okay, final statement, and then we'll send this liminal space and playtime. Doug, would you say this movie was written?
Yes, that
from
book,
Where You Dream.
The book from Where You Dream.
We're going to do
specifically discusses that the power of your story.
We're going to analyze this book.
Yep, I've got it. I read it. The first third is freaking amazing, but it really focuses in on that the source power, the germ source of your imagination comes from the same part of your psyche that generates your dreams. You know, the unconscious projections of these sort of understandable images and feelings. And so, yeah, that's what playtime is. I mean, you're playing these things out. So I think a film, that's what I also meant about authenticity and honesty in this film. The director didn't stop that. She kept that in there. She kept playing and didn't care what anyone said. And I think that's part of what makes the movie work, that authenticity left right in there. And that's why, even though there's mention of patriarchy and there seems to be messaging, all of that is crushed under the weight of playtime, in my opinion. And that's why it didn't bother me that it was present, because I knew I was playing. I knew I was having fun. And yet they managed to find moments of poignancy in it. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, it comes up from the psyche, those archetypes, those self-generated moments.
All right. Kamran,
that was fun.
we want to get if Cameron's got here, I can keep going for a little bit. I can.
No, I'm going doesn't mean you have to stop. There's a lot more to talk about. I do have it's 2 hours. I got to get other work done. I actually have to write script to write. I got things to do. So, but thank you for bringing me on there. It's such a wonderful thing, and I'm really glad that we've created a community, and I'm really glad that Douglas, you've become a part of Heath's wonderful channel here, because I think you know it's really great that you are sharing your perspectives. They're very sophisticated. You and I have talked a lot offline, and I'm delighted to see that. So thank you. And that's my Patreon that we got up on.
That's the Patreon. Awesome. I put the link in there. Go check that out if you want to follow Kamran.
Hey, I'm a member of one Patreon, and it's Cameron's. It's funny. I get these updates from Patreon. I'll click on it and read those articles almost instantly, just to hear the perspective.
Yeah, that's where you need to go.
I'm still waiting for Brianna to join, but that's okay. Well, which one of these is?
I actually, Kamran, I will be probably soon. You will probably be hearing from me soon on my screenplay. So talk about that.
Yeah, well, I just read her first draft screenplay.
Yeah.
And I've done consulting with pretty much everyone on this screen here, and I love that. And so that's one of the things you can along with my perspectives on Hollywood.
To consult with you again.
I'm excited because you're all smart. It's fun to consult with smart people that you actually learn from, and the script isn't terrible. You're having fun with it, right? So, all right. So you can that's one thing you can on my Patreon. You can do consulting sessions with me if you're a writer, novelist, or screenplay writer, and I write all kinds of fun stuff. There's news articles about Hollywood. I every now and then get some interesting scoops of stuff that's happening behind the scenes, but it's a fun place to be.
Right. And yes. And so I would say this is before cameras. This is one of the most probably the most intellectual conversation on the Barbie movie that is taking place on YouTube. So that's where you come to. Our audience here.
I will say though, the Beyond the Screenplay one is good too. I recommend people check Beyond the Screenplay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We also have a very intellectual audience here. We've got, our commenters and things like that. This is a good place as you know, deep dives.
Well, and I learned from the fish called Wanda, don't call me stupid. Don't call me stupid. Don't call me stupid.
That's a mean word, Cameron. Don't say mean words.
There's a big takeaway here, Kamran.
Yeah, you're going to get in timeout if you say the mean words.
All right. I'll have to go back and see
what
I said.
They didn't even say worse words like that than on Barbie, so I'm very sad. But it's okay. I love you all. I'm being egregious to make a point, which is kind of what satire is. When I said
you're being satirical. Yeah, there you go.
Satirical, because the idea of a satire, let's bring it full circle before I go. The idea of a satire is to push things to the place of absurdity in order to deconstruct them in a real way, not in the form of fake deconstruction like The Last Jedi, where you're essentially tearing the heart of something out in order to see what's inside of it and leaving it dead. That's not deconstruction. Deconstruction is removing of illusions. Yeah, it's removing of illusions. That's what it is. It's about seeing the truth of things as they are. And often, because of the barriers that we create as human beings to truth, you have to push things to a place of absurdity where you're forced to laugh, and the laughter is the vibration that shatters the illusion and allows truth to come out, right? And that's the joke of it. And so I hope people who haven't seen this film will approach it as a satire. If you do it, I think you get it really fast. And I hope those who want to rewatch it again, imagine if you were thinking of this as Peter Sellers in Pink Panther, right? Or watching, Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks. If you approach it from that perspective, I think you're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and guys, we got to be able to laugh at ourselves, man. I think this movie gave me a great chance to laugh at myself and just being a guy and the silly things those guys can do sometimes. I took it from a place of love, not from a place of hate. I thought that they were making fun of guys in a way that was accurate and yet funny to me. So I appreciated it.
Okay. All right, my friends, I gotta go. God bless everyone here. If you can stick around, I want to stick around for a little bit for further conversation.
Yeah, I'm still going. We can go, but thank you so much for joining us, Cameron. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Let's maybe do another one of these for Oppenheimer in the next week or so. Huh?
Cameronheimer.
We'll go see. Yeah. All right, Oppenheimer. All right. So Oppenheimer's got to be done. Thank you.
All right, my friends. God bless you all. Peace. We'll take that.
See you, Cameron.
Bye.
That was good.
All right.
You got to join us.
Well, what else is there?
Well, that was awesome. I thought that was a good conversation. There was so much out there. I can't remember the last time that a movie came out and I heard such different accounts of what the movie was. Like they were incompatible. Like what this person said they saw versus what that person. I was like, I've got to see. I had no intention to see Barbie, by the way. It didn't seem like a movie I was interested in. But after hearing such different responses to it, I was like, now I have to see it and see what I think. It's crazy.
I want to do more opening weekend movies now because I've genuinely avoided them in the past because I thought I wouldn't like the energy of an opening weekend. I thought it would be obnoxious or something. And now I'm converted. I'm like, hey, this was like so special and so cool. And there's so much passion. I just, one of the feelings that I have coming away from this movie is just like, I don't know, there's so many feelings. It's just like, it's very joyful, just a very warm feeling, a very like, almost like a pride that I feel of being a woman and the sort of like celebration of womanhood that is definitely in there. And is in the cultural phenomenon surrounding it. I'm so happy, like seeing Greta Gerwig doing so well. It makes me like, I have this like solidarity almost, and just like this. I love seeing people succeed. I love seeing women succeed in an industry that's been very harsh to female directors for so long, only until very recently has the patriarchal aspects of Hollywood started to improve. And so it's just, it gets, I don't know. It gives me such joy. Like I just feel so happy from that.
That's awesome. I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Greta Gerwig's a director, so she would be a perfect, like role model in a sense.
No,
right?
For real. No, there are some pioneers, I would say, like that have made a lot of differences in the past 10 years. And oh god, I'm forgetting her name. Who the girl that did the woman that did Wonder Woman.
Patty Jenkins.
Thank you, Patty Jenkins. I was like, I can see her face. I can't remember her name, but she's one of those, but she just, this movie just is surpassing hers now as the most highest ranking with, like as I was saying before. And I don't know, it makes me happy. It's great to see. Makes me more confident in me trying to go after these kinds of goals.
Well, to your point, like I sensed it being a woman moment. Okay. From the standpoint of while I was sitting in the stands and I heard girls and women, I'm not really girls, more women, all laughing at the same things and appreciating in unison. They weren't taking cues from each other. They're all laughing it spontaneously. They're all reacting spontaneously. And like I said, there was a couple moments where I was like, what are they laughing at? Like when the Barbie sat down and slowly unfolded. And I was like, oh, that's probably what Barbie does in playtime. They had to all deal with this problem with Barbie.
But as Positive Phantom Harun said, that, I mean, isn't that something also that G.I. Joes and He-Man do? Yes.
100%. That's what I'm saying. I recognized that impulse from my play space when I was a kid all the way through, because writing is part of that play space in the creative world. You're still there. You're just professionalizing and specializing in it at such a level. So when I was watching the Barbie thing, I suddenly realized this is the play space for women and girls, and this feminine play space, which even though I never played with Barbies, I understood a kindred spirit of fun and play in this film. And I appreciate that.
I love you talking about the kindred spirit with action figures. It's made me smile every time you said that, because in my experience as a girl, I was playing with Barbies with my brother, who was playing with his action figures, and we combined our toys. And so that was what Barbies was for me. It was Barbies and action figures. And sometimes stuffed animals. They were like monsters. Like
Yeah.
there was a bit, and he's a very like very sweet natured guy who's very like kind of in touch with his more feminine side, so to speak. I mean, in the broadest sense. And for me, like I am kind of more of like a bit of a tomboy, and so our play styles were it was such a balance of the like all of the archetypes of feminine and masculine play were all there combined from both of us. Like the Barbies, they would be marriages, and then they would go to war against the Happy Meal toys, and then they would go on an adventure and try to escape. It was like, so anyway,
that's funny. My sister and I did the same thing. She had,
oh yeah,
it wasn't Barbie though. She had, it was always Star Wars meets Strawberry Shortcake.
Oh,
so there was like
yeah.
There was like the purple pie man. And am I right that the figures of Strawberry Shortcake smelled like strawberries and grapes?
I don't know. I didn't play with those toys. I feel like I had friends that did, but
we did the same thing every now and then, and we didn't play together often, but when we did, we would try to merge her toy, her Strawberry Shortcake figures with my Star Wars figures. And we played, like you said, it was a clash of play styles, but we would make it work.
Yeah, not even a clash in our case. It was just a perfect merging.
Oh, well, you guys did a good job.
Yeah, because like I said, like we both were comfortable with that whole range of play styles. I think
that's awesome. That's great. But yeah, anyway, go ahead, Heath.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so what does that mean for our analysis of story structure then? If this is a genius union of the hero's journey and the heroine's labyrinth, if this is the genius union of those two, what does that mean for our analysis of story structure going forward?
Well, it confirms that they're not contradictory.
Correct. I totally agree with that. In fact, the further down this road I go, the more I see how complementary they really are. And I'll see elements of both in other films, or in a hero's journey story. When I shift my focus onto one heroine, I'll see elements of the heroine's labyrinth just in that one heroine. So I think in terms of story structure, so when I break down story structure, even in the book that's I'm writing, it's about archetypal designs. It's a certain pattern of events that comes up, like the refusal of the call, the liminal space, the entry into the underworld, or for the heroine's labyrinth, home as battleground, which in Barbie is the dream house. I mean, it couldn't get more home as battleground than that, or the broken spell, which happens so these are archetypal designs that can be strung together to tell a story. And this one, I think, was unique in that instead of kind of like a braiding of both, which is what I see a little bit more of, this was like, we're going to start with the hero's journey and we're going to end with the heroine's labyrinth.
And then there's,
I think it was unconscious on the part of Greta Gerwig, but it's there. For me, when I look at it, I could see it when I unpack it.
Sorry, were you finished with what you were just saying? I was curious to know what your response would be to what I'm about to say, and I kind of have a suspicion what it might be, because I actually, in my notes, I had something written for you, Doug.
You did?
Go for it. Okay.
This remains like the one, like, obviously I love your analysis and all this, but there's like this one thing that I feel we keep coming back to that we kind of disagree on, which is the idea that the hero's journey is kind of like pedantic and like getting nitty gritty, but the idea that it is fundamentally like a warrior's journey is something I'm still not convinced of, because it seems to me the hero's journey is broad enough that it contains all sorts of different variations, and this to me was an example of that, because I was like, okay, this is a hero's journey, broadly speaking, like it's a Campbellian hero's journey, but it's definitely not there's definitely nothing warrior like about it. I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to see what you're going to say before I predict.
Well, there was certainly something warrior about it, I thought.
What do you mean?
Well, so my point,
Doug.
my point was that the root source of the hero's journey was probably a warrior's journey in its structure, in that you have a person in their native culture. There is a threat to that culture. They leave. It's like a soldier's journey. You leave home, you get trained, you have to master competencies, your sense of identity is broken down. I mean, even in the army today, they shave their heads. Your uniqueness is somewhat erased so that you are part of this larger body. So your identity is broken down, and then you go off to face a militant threat of sorts, usually far from home. All I'm saying is that's very similar to the hero's journey. So I think that was the root source, but I think it has evolved way beyond the basic level of a soldier's journey to be much more universal and much more nuanced and complex than just that. So I don't think that every hero's journey has to follow a warrior mantra or a warrior motif. I'm just saying that there's a model that seems to be rooted in that soldier's journey as the source code of this thing, which has grown beyond that. It has evolved past soldiery and into something more basic in the human condition.
But you're going to an external place,
correct,
to defeat a foe.
Right. So I think that the archetypal reality of this repetitive experience for soldiers, let's say, that you have to leave and you go face a military, like there's a certain archetypal recurrent theme or recurrent something that happens in every generation, so it's instantly recognizable to us. I think we recognize it. But when you stretch that out and you take it beyond just soldiery, you can do things with it that are fantastical and fun that don't necessarily have to follow a pure warrior trope. You can move away from the warrior trope and still have a hero's journey because of its evolved state. I think the same is true with the Heroine's Labyrinth. I think there's a core experience that's recurrent throughout culture and generations, but you can expand it to something a little bit more universal and transcendent of its core basic structure. The core structure is still kind of there, but it's grown past that. That's what I think anyway.
Okay.
That's a really good response. I wasn't even what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say something more along the lines of this one is a hybrid of both, and so it would be taking on the traits of both. But I mean, that's a good response. I'll take it. I guess the one other thing, this is still sticking, and been wanting to talk to you about.
Go for it.
But so there's the element of the two different cultures too, and there's I'm still not totally convinced on that either. I was just listening to Christopher Vogler. I haven't read the book yet. The
Writer's Journey.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet, but so I need to, and I can't really have my opinions on this kind of stuff until I do. But I was listening to some interviews with him on what's the name of that channel? I listen to it all the time. Film Courage. Film Courage is a really good one for filmmakers.
Oh yeah, I subscribe to that one.
Yeah, but there was some recently from him, and he mentioned something about, he was saying there's an ordinary world, and then the other world that you're going to, or it could be a different state of being. That like the different world, it may not be a physical moving to somewhere else, but it could be a different state of being. And so that seems to maybe put that into question, but then maybe it doesn't, because maybe that's just.
I think that's a different manifestation of that core idea. If the core idea, if the primal archetype is leaving your home culture to a foreign culture where you might be destroyed, and you're facing a militant possible destroyer. If that's the core archetype and we expand it, well, Alice in Wonderland, you can make the case it has that hero's journey type of thing because she's descending into a different world there, which is fantastical. The fantastical is the evolved or variant form of foreign. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a variation of the core concept in a way that's still true to the ideas, true to the archetype, and yet it's totally expressed in this other way, this fantastical way. So I think it just shows the elasticity of the archetype. That there might be a core thing that resonates with us, but even when expanded and changed, we still recognize this experience of entering into this different place where we're out of sync, where we're off, maybe we're guarded, where the things that are familiar to us are missing, and the possibility of our destruction is there. Even if it's done in this different way, even if it's done not in a pure warrior trope, we still recognize that archetypal pattern in the way it's being expressed in this story. So I think that's what I like so much about archetypes, is that you could take one archetype and express it in this huge spectrum, and each part on that spectrum looks totally different The way it looks in The Matrix is different from Star Wars, is different than Lord of the Rings. Like the way they're expressed are completely different. And yet there is a core pattern that we can recognize. And I think that core pattern is where that power comes from. So anyway, that's what I think. I think that it's elastic in that sense.
Okay, so you would say that like that if you're having, they're not, let's say if you have a situation where the character isn't physically going to another location, but they're in a new situation, that you would put that as sort of the expansion of the concept, that's sort of the leaving the culture is maybe the core, sort of the core idea that the structure is based on, but then that these are other kind of iterations growing out of that. Is that accurate?
I would have always design is intact.
Okay,
but it's expressed in a different way. The expression of it in story or in film is different, even though the design is the same. And I think that's what good storytellers could do. They could take a core idea and they can expand it to where it's still relatable, still recognizable, and yet it's new. It's different. You haven't seen it like this before.
Well, that's what James Bacon says. What about the soldier who stays at home to defend regarding the hero's journey?
I would actually regard that a little bit more of the heroine's labyrinth.
Well, possibly, but then he brings up the idea of the Coast Guard and the National Guard. No, I think you could totally tell a hero's journey story where somebody is, from Iowa and they join the Coast Guard and now they're in the other world, which is the ocean. Right, you're leaving it. No, you could totally tell that story. The National Guard. You could totally like here in Alabama, somebody joins the National Guard, and then all of a sudden, that's when the hurricane strikes, and they're sent to the hurricane area. No, that would be going into the other world as far as that story goes. No, you could totally tell that story like that.
I agree.
You've convinced me, Doug. Good job.
Yay!
Sable Phoenix sent in that I have a question about the transition between the two story structures here. But Sable Phoenix did send in this $10 super chat. Thank you, Sable Phoenix. One of our favorite.
Sable is awesome.
Sable is awesome. The hero's journey is the yang energy journey, outwardly focused, pushing against what shouldn't be. The heroine's labyrinth is the yin energy journey, focused inward, drawing on what you want towards you.
And I would just add that the inward journey, there's an exoticism inside too. The inner world can be just as fantastical in some ways, but it seems that when I try to look for a distinction in what the difference is from the outer versus the inner seems to be a world of illusions, whereas the outer is more of a pure exotic alternate reality where it's a functional world that you don't understand yet. Whereas the inner world is kind of disguised and full of illusions. And both are worth exploring. But I think that's awesome. We've actually talked about this before, this idea of the yin and the yang and how both are necessary. And I agree with that. The more I look at stories and I really try to break down the heroine's labyrinth, I'll see traces of the hero's journey in certain characters or themes. Just like in stories that I think are heroes' journeys, I'll find elements of the heroine's labyrinth kind of wrapped in there in certain places too. And Barbie's interesting because it seems to be like a demarcation line. There's this opening. It has the classic hero's journey opening. And as far as I'm concerned, a very classic heroine's labyrinth finale, where the home itself is the place where the heroine must reclaim and defend.
Doug, I thought about that as I was watching it.
You did.
Okay. I totally did. And I thought about that as I was watching it and I was going, and that's why, like I said that I basically checked out of the movie at the Ken Civil War scene. And then there was a dance scene and I was like, what is going on here? And I thought about that. And the reason I said that I was, the reason that I felt like I had checked out is because they didn't know what story they were trying to tell. And they have mixed all of this up here. But so let's talk about this. Seriously analyze the transition between those two stories.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to make the transition between a hero's journey story, because I would say that this totally sets up, it's not a warrior thing. It's warrior archetypically. I would say it's warrior archetypically because Barbie is told you have to go someplace else that is outside of your world. There is somebody who is in danger, who is hurting. You have to go and fix that person and you have to leave your world.
There's an outside threat
right
to the native culture. That's very archetypical, yes, for heroes' journeys.
well, okay, right. So there's an outside threat, right, and that's what you've got to go and fix that. And then, so I would say that opening third of that movie, the opening act, right, and because with the amazing from the visual perspective, hey, doing the all the different, the roller skating and then the rocket ship and all that. And just loves it. It was perfectly from the children's perspective. And then you go into the other world. That was perfect. Okay. So it sets up the hero's journey. That's a warrior kind of thing. You've got to go over there and fix something that's over there. But then we reach the point and confront something. And so she does that and she confronts the teenage kid. So, you also get the awesome humor, which is the perfect place for humor, that when she goes into the other world, which is our real world, she's from Barbie world. At the end of Act 1, she goes into the other world, which is our real world, and we get a bunch of humor about her trying to figure out how to interact with that. And there's a lot of humor there, and that's the perfect place for it. She finds out that here's the kid that I got to help.
Or she thinks that's who she
thinks that.
Right.
Okay. And now so she thinks that. And I would say it's perfectly okay for there to be a twist, because now there's the twist. She encounters the kid. Now there's the twist. And it's not the kid that she's got to help. It's the mother.
That was really a pretty impactful scene to me.
Okay. But when does she help the mother?
In the car, I think, is when that's revealed, right?
They have to help each other. They have to help each other ultimately.
So what's missing is the wise guy. There doesn't seem to be a training sequence for Barbie or a wise guide. So those are missing. It seems to go from a hero's journey opening to a fish out of water. It seems to focus on more, and that's where you get all the satire. Yeah, well, you get a different dose of satire in this fish out of water sequence when she reaches California. But structurally, the transition to Heroine's Labyrinth, as far as I understand it, is when Ken returns, because that is the broken truce. He's breaking the roles. He's gonna break the truce that they had, where he is an accessory. He's a semi-invisible character in Barbie Land. He's breaking the truce. He's going back, and he's gonna upturn the native culture into a patriarchy, where the Kens rule the world. So now the native culture is turning against the heroine. And that's the note, the specific note about what that means with the broken truce. The native culture turns against the heroine.
Sable Phoenix says, "Holy crap! The mother is Barbie's sacred fire."
Yes, and wow.
Oh.
About that. I guess that has to be true, because she represents stereotypical Barbie, which is the ideal Barbie, right? The supposed ideal Barbie, which represents, according to Cameron too, idealized the ideal world. And the mom is dealing with the real world, which is very messy, very difficult. And in some ways she feels like she's failing at it, right? Yeah. Listen, I've seen the movie once, so I'm sure there's probably a ton that I missed. But Sable Phoenix, you might be right about that. Yeah, because she has to go.
I'll have to think about it too.
Fire.
I don't know. I just didn't think that she helped her. Okay, I'll watch it again. So I'll watch it again. I'll report on the morning grind. But I was thinking, okay, it's fine. I was thinking it's fine for there to be a twist. She thinks it's the daughter that she's got to help. No, it turns out it's the mother. But then, as it turns out, that basically there's really nothing that she needed to do, and the mother's going to become an ally of hers to fight Ken.
I think the problem here, Heath, I didn't watch your whole, I didn't have the time. I ended up running out of time to watch your whole analysis of it, but I saw your, the snippet that you had posted on your channel about this aspect. And I think you may be off in terms of what Barbie's arc is.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but your analysis was that she was set up where it was like what she needed was to, okay, actually remind me, what was it that you were thinking what was it that she wanted that she needed? She wanted to not change. Oh, I remembered now. She needed to help others or something like that. Is that
she needed to understand there was something outside of herself, that she needed to help others, right? Because she lived a very superficial life, and she was very clear that what she wanted was for nothing to change in her superficial life.
I think that's incorrect. I don't think it's a story about learning to serve others. I think it's a story about learning to embrace change. So she doesn't want, so they're connected. She doesn't want anything to change. Specifically, she doesn't want to grow up. That's what it is. It's the archetype of a child encountering, the adult world. And then what she needs is to accept that change and to accept adulthood and all that, and which she does ultimately do. And so the mother is part of the key of helping her get there. So whatever role that is, I think it's not that she's the one that Barbie has to help. It's really more the other way, that the mother is the one that's going to help Barbie ultimately, because the mother is she's also the elixir. She is what she brings back to her world. Like we're on the hero's journey aspect. When she brings her back to Barbie Land, it is that mother who ends up being able to, who brings the key. The mother and the daughter, they bring the key to being able to save Barbie Land. And so another note, something that occurred to me while Doug was talking a second ago, I think the way you connect the two in this story is that the entire hero's journey arc completes, so that like they have the whole, there's they're running away from there's a chase or whatever what it's called, the flight, right, where they're getting away from the Mattel world. They have the return, they come back.
All those guys are on roller skates.
Right. The elixir ultimately ends up being the two humans that come with them. Because then once they return, now we're in a heroine's labyrinth situation, because now the problems from the real world, so they've brought the good things from the real world and bad things from the real world. And both of those things are what creates the conflict, and then also what allows it's the elixir that ultimately helps them fix the problem at home. So I think that might be the way to think about the transition between them.
I think that's great.
Explain.
Well, I mean, clearly, you have a lot of fans here, because
they're overlapping
saying,
and complimenting each other.
Yes, exactly, Brianna. Holy crap! Holy crap! So apparently, everyone likes that.
I pulled up my notes on the Sacred Fire, and what's interesting is there's usually on the heroine, there's 3 claims to her Sacred Fire. One is her claim, which is for individuation, passion, agency, free will, desire, creativity, nonconformity. This is how the heroine personally expresses it. And I do think you're right. The extension of that is the mother, who is dealing with this at a very real level. She's in the real world, and it's not so easy to deal with free will. You make wrong choices, you get trapped, you make mistakes, there's consequences. It's a messy world out there. But she is the catalyst for that individual agency. Secondly, there's a native culture claim, which is for continuity, for things not to change, for order, family, heritage, tradition, wisdom, knowledge, conformity. Barbie Land is the perfect world. And Barbie says that she thinks her job is to perpetuate the continuity of Barbie Land, that things shouldn't change here. But she's like, have you ever thought of death? That's the first intrusion of the heroine's claim, the individual course of action, which comes from the mother, because that's where she gets the idea, according to the movie, according to the world building. The idea of death comes to her because the mother is thinking of it. So it comes to Barbie. And then there's a Minotaur's claim, which is ego, possessive love, dominance, power, monopoly, injustice, and nihilism, which is what Ken represents as he takes over the native culture. He attempts to dominate and monopolize. And the other note says the 3 competing claims to the Sacred Fire must be reconciled by the story's conclusion. And that's exactly what they do. Her individual free will, what Barbie Land means, the idea of continuity for Barbie Land, and the masked Minotaur in this, who is a reformed villain in this one with Ken, not a evil masked Minotaur. But all 3 of those are claims. So I think you're right, Sable, that the mother represents the real world expression of Barbie's Sacred Fire. But Barbie thinks her Sacred Fire is the continuity of the native culture, for nothing to change in Barbie Land. That's super interesting.
I don't know. So I get the idea that she needs to go out and save someone from her experience with Weird Barbie. and you
Why
guys
did she do
seem
it?
to all
To
deny
preserve Barbie Land.
Yes, I know. And that's why I thought that it was very important for us to talk about starting from a state of perfection. Okay. And then she has an intrusion against perfection. Her inciting incident is an intrusion against perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that her, and that then she is given a task to go out to fix someone. That's what it is. And I said, I don't see that in the movie. I've only seen it once.
No, I don't think
but
she's
I
going
said,
out
I
to
don't
fix
see that.
someone though. It's like she has to go and find this person, right? No, I'm actually not sure.
Well,
if I
she has to
remember correctly.
confront this person to figure out why Barbie Land is dealing with this new intrusive. Do you ever think about death? You know, that's not Barbie Land talk. So she's going out there to find out. I thought I understood. She's going out there to find out why this child, she thinks it's a little girl, is not playing with her Barbies the right way anymore. I thought that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to restore that relationship. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that how she does it?
I don't know. I didn't get the feeling that it was setting up for her to do something selfless or something like that. That I don't.
You didn't think she was going out to fix anybody? Well, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I got that as I was watching. I'll watch it again. But you didn't think that she was needing to go and fix someone.
I not in the way that you're saying it. I don't think that wasn't how I read it anyway when I was watching it.
Well, by fix someone, maybe do you mean to restore the relationship? The positive Barbie attitude that seems to be missing all of a sudden or changing?
No, I didn't take it that way because we already had introduced the idea that it is through rough play that you get a weird Barbie. So no, we had already completely introduced the idea that an appropriate way to play with a Barbie is through rough play, which is throwing your difficulties onto the Barbie. We had already completely introduced that idea. So it wasn't to restore balance, but necessarily to restore balance. And that's why I had the idea that Barbie was supposed to sacrifice herself, because that's what Weird Barbie had done. We'd already introduced that idea.
Yeah. See, I think you're looking at it as if this is a story about toys. It's not a story about toys. It's not a story about being Barbie. It's a story about growing up.
No, I completely reject that. I completely reject that completely. It's because you can't just dismiss it as a story about toys, because you can completely understand as a story about growing up, because as growing up, what do you have to do? You have to sacrifice yourself for your children. Mm-hmm. What do you have to do? You know, if you want to talk about just your relationship as a hero's journey with someone, what are you doing? You're sacrificing yourself for others. No, that's not a toy journey. A story about sacrificing yourself for others can completely be about growing up. It can completely about something about
it's part of the maturation.
It can be, but I still think that's what the story is.
Completely true.
Sure, it can be, but again, that's not about what this is. It is more of a self-actualization kind of a story, as opposed to.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But
that's just what it is. That's what I'm saying.
I think her initial reason for going into the real world is to restore the relation, to find out why. Mm-hmm. The girl who plays with her in the real world has stopped playing with her and is kind of having this negative, less than perfect these thoughts that are less than perfect, that Barbie's like, we don't think like that around here. I need to go fix that. So I thought that she was going out there to kind of restore the magic of the relationship between her as Barbie and the girl who plays with her.
But you thought that went well? I mean, so yes, there was a scene in the car when it's like, oh my God, it was you. And she's like, yeah, I'm having all these terrible ideas about Barbie. And, you know, I've been drawing all these horrible Barbies. That didn't have anything to do with Barbie helping her.
Well, but it was like also when she brought her into the world, the way she helped her was by helping her like reconnect with her younger self. And like, you know, she came away healthier version of herself, and that was part of why the daughter chose to go back. There's that point when they're leaving and they're not going to help, and the daughter notices how much this experience has helped her mom, and how her mom is more loose and more free and more being herself.
Her mom going back to Barbie world,
and that's why they go back to Barbie world, because it has helped.
No, they go back to Well, they go back. Don't they go back to Barbie world because the Ken has gone back to Barbie world?
No, I'm talking about when the two humans, the mom and the daughter, leave. After the Barbie has given up, she's in a state of despair. She stopped trying, and then the mom and the daughter leave. Remember? And then they counter the part where they're building a wall in the wrong direction.
You can't go sideways, just up.
Alan comes with him. And at that point, that's when they make a decision to go back and help. And it's because of the daughter noticing a change in her mother and noticing that Barbie and their experience they just had in Barbie Land has helped her mother. And her mother is showing she's more exuberant, she's more happy. It's like all these things. And I think that is why the daughter says, okay, we're going to go back and we're going to help them. And then they do. And then they go help. And those two, the humans, are the key for them figuring out how to break the Barbies from their brainwashing and all of that. So I do think it all connects. It's just, I don't know, watch it again and then we.
Well, I'll watch it again because that wasn't the part of the movie I was talking about. I mean, if you're talking about that, the mom is okay because you spent 25 minutes of this movie in Barbie world. I mean, okay, but I mean, I was talking about the part of the movie where Barbie realizes that, it's not the daughter I'm here to save, it's the mother. What do I do? The answer was almost nothing.
With the mom?
Barbie had almost nothing to do with the mom. Like when Barbie finds out that it's the mom that she's supposed to be there for.
Well, I would say that the lesson is
do.
Well, the lesson is for Barbie, because Barbie thinks that the problem is that the mom has grown up and has certain negative reality that she's dealing with, and the lesson is for Barbie to learn that that's the path. You know, nobody stays a child forever. That what the mom's dealing with is the right thing to be dealing with. You know, you grow out of childhood. You're not going to be living in an idealized Barbie world forever, and you're going to have to change. And that what's happening with the idea is thinking of death or thinking about the problems she's having with motherhood or any failure she might feel like she's having as an adult. That is the path. We all have done, you know, that's normal. So the lesson is actually for Barbie to learn that, I would say.
Okay, so it's the lesson for Barbie that, so it's the lesson for Barbie that when Barbie finally gets there and the mother, and he realizes it's not the daughter, it's the mother, and the mother has all these thoughts of death, Barbie is supposed to realize that's correct.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is the course of free will. Free will is not idyllic. It is messy. It's traumatic. You will make huge mistakes. You will make mistakes that have huge consequences. You will hurt people. You will be selfish. That's the path. I mean, you're going to go through all of these things and have to learn from it. You know, so I think that, you know, autonomy, the idea of being an individual, that I'm going to go out and do my own thing. I'm not going to be controlled by anybody. It's an obvious impulse, but it's really tough. And I think that was the message that the mom who's steeped in the reality of going her own way, you know, who has her individual agency and is doing her thing, she's steeped in it and she's dealing with it. Barbie is not. Barbie is steeped in the idyllic world of her native culture where nothing is wrong. There's no problems ever. And Barbie thinks that her job is to restore that. And the reality is it's time to let go of that. And learn to be a little bit more like the mom, which I think Barbie does at the end. Doesn't she kind of be like, look, I need to learn who Barbie is. And she even tells Ken, I think, like, you need to learn who Ken is, you know, if we're going to embrace individual free will and make our choices in the world, we're going to have to, our lives are probably going to be a little bit messy like the mom, which is to me a statement that the mom is the most realistic person in this whole film. You know, she's dealing with the reality of free will and living an autonomous life.
Okay. Okay. Then I would say, then what would happen in that movie beyond then is if you were intending to have the flip from the kid to the mother, and then instead of Barbie helping the mother understand her trauma and figure out the trauma, that the story needs to be that Barbie needs to understand that trauma is part of life and that death is part of this, that she needs to return to Barbie world and she needs to reject the mission that weird Barbie sent her on, that you sent me to go fix someone, and actually they had it right all along. And so she still becomes the agent of change in Barbie world. That, like, we can't stop death because I've been a proponent of saying that Barbie needs to be the agent of change, because Barbie in the beginning of this movie was so much about not changing Barbie world that by the end of the movie, she needs to be the agent of change in Barbie world. But because they swapped to the heroine's labyrinth, she becomes the protector of Barbie world, which I still think is really weird, to be the agent of someone, the person who's trying to restore the perfection of Barbie world. I still think that's weird.
Except it's not restoring the perfection. It's bringing it now to a better place, because they don't go back to how they were at the very beginning.
They don't.
No, they don't, because she basically says, there's no more Ken and Barbie. We're going to go our separate ways, and Ken's going to learn to be Ken, and whatever that means, and she's going to learn to be Barbie, which is whatever that means. So she doesn't. So the part of her sacred fire that wins out is the individual free will, and she's very emotional. If I recall, she's very scared about this future, the uncertainty of the future she's going to be dealing with, because she becomes human, which is the acceptance of free will out, away from the conformity of Barbie land. I mean, that visit with her gynecologist, she's going to be, it's like Pinocchio. Now she's a real girl now. So she's going to have to deal with everything that means, with all that means.
And,
so
and
I
it's
think
also,
go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, the gender dynamics are not restored exactly to where they were before. They're not at a place of equality per se, but it's said that they're shifting and they're improving. They're realizing that how they've been treating the Kens was wrong. And so it's not back to the original state of perfection, because the original state of perfection wasn't perfect. It was only perfect for Barbie. It wasn't perfect for the Kens and the Alan. So that's it's moving forward.
We didn't talk about Alan, because I think that was completely useless. The Sable Phoenix says the moment she starts talking about death, she becomes the agent of change.
That's the call to adventure, I think, in this story. Does anyone think about death? Never mind. That's what
I completely see this opposite of Sable Phoenix. Completely opposite. The moment she starts talking about death, she becomes the agent of change. I was like, no, that was not Barbie's agentive decision to talk about change. It was very clear in that movie that was impressed upon her by the mother. Barbie was not an agent in that decision to think about death. What are you talking about?
Well, hold on a second. There's the conscious conviction, and when I studied the hero's journey, I made this distinction. A lot of times the hero or heroine has a conscious conviction, I'm going to go protect Barbie land. And then there's the unconscious conviction, actually, she's going to change Barbie land forever. What she's really wanting is to discover herself on this journey. But her conscious conviction, what she thinks she's doing, is to restore order as she understood it in Barbie land.
I don't know that I don't, because I set up so many of the stories about what people want versus what they need. I would not say that what Barbie wants is to go and change Barbie world.
No, what she wants is to protect Barbie world.
Right. She wants it not to change.
Correct.
It's interesting.
But she needs it to change. She's got to go through an arc where she realizes this got to change.
Well, it's not even that she needs Barbie world to change. She needs to change. The idyllic world.
That's right. That's right. She changes, and then when she changes, she comes back to Barbie world, and the change is the elixir that she brings. Right. That's right. I mean, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I completely agree.
I think that's a good observation, that what she brings back from the real world, consciously anyway, is the mother and the daughter, who do play a pivotal role in the changes that go about. And again, I think the mother, and I'll have to watch it again. I've only seen it once, so I was only able to, and I was really watching it from a place of entertainment. I had,
me too.
Right now, I'm trying to remember it to break it down in a more analytical way. But the mother seems to be what Barbie should be. So I do think that the mother represents the real world version of what Barbie needs, what Barbie hasn't faced, which is growing up. Facing the messiness of autonomy. I've thought about that a long time ago, that we all want autonomy in this world, but it's tough. you make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes there's a desire for people to want someone else to cover all that for them. Let me just be a small, you take care of the big stuff. I'll just be the accessory, or I'll be the small person. But I won't have to deal with the reality of decision-making and autonomy and free will, because it's scary. And I think at the end of the movie, Barbie shows us how scared she is that she's going to choose to be human, which is to become like the mom.
I gotta say, I'm starting to like, I'm starting to run out of steam here, but I do
All
want
right.
to mention
Well, we
something.
can wrap this up.
Yeah, I would want to mention something real quickly too. That stream I've mentioned a couple times now with Beyond the Screenplay. They touched a little bit on that issue of the autonomy and how the world itself creates a weird issue with the toys. But like they're toys, and so like, but they're also the main characters, so they have to have that free will. They have to have that sense of autonomy, and that that it may have been important to not show until later on, like just how tight that connection is between her and the mom, because that does take away some of that feeling of autonomy of her being, an agentative character. So it's kind of like an illusion of that. Like you have to kind of like have the illusion of her being an agentative character for the story to work. But that, I don't know. I just,
one interesting thing,
my brain is turning off, but
well, and I'll just say this in conclusion, because I find this fascinating between in feminist and heroines-led stories, the mother-daughter relationship. Because simply by being a mother, the mother character tends to honor on some level the wishes of the native culture, which is continuity, perpetuate, have a child, be a mom, raise the child, perpetuate the culture in that sense. That is what a lot of young women resist. They do not like being pigeonholed into this. You're going to be a mom, right? That's such a narrow view of what their potential is, what they could be. And that's why you have heroines claiming their sacred fire so early in these stories. I want to be so much more. So the mother figure is an odd character, and it creates a very interesting like conflict dynamic between mothers and daughters, because simply by being a mom, the mother represents on some level the wishes of the native culture, and that which the heroine rejects. And what's weird is the heroine must learn to reconcile with their mother. If the mother-daughter dynamic is in the story, it's usually contentious for that reason, but by the end they try to solve it. This movie shows that the daughter and the mom grow closer together by the end of this movie. Again, I have to rewatch it, but I do remember the daughter coming to terms with the mother, and the mother coming to terms with the daughter in this. So, but again, these are conflicts between the native culture and the heroine usually.
All right. Well, I will also watch it again, and if anybody is available on the morning grind, then when I reanalyze it or whatever, you're welcome to come by.
I bet it's been
really fantastic. Cool. This has been the most, like I said, the most intellectual probably analysis of Barbie that's out there. I think probably
a lot of different angles coming in on it, but it just shows the layers that the film has.
Right.
And I bet if I rewatch it a couple times, that I'll find more that I completely missed the first time.
Yeah, on that note of the different layers, it was interesting. I watched this with my roommate, and while we were driving home, I asked her kind of like what her takeaway was, like what was the kind of meaning, whatever that she got from it, and each of us had a different answer because there were different themes and there were different things that resonated with us. Like she was drawn to the kind of the self-actualization, the sort of you don't need to. You got to find yourself on your own. You don't need to be with other people, kind of a thing. And I was touched by the, how it's worth being alive. The pain and the trauma of it is worth the beauty. That was kind of like my coming away feeling. Both of those are, because they're two different people, different things are standing out to us. But both of those are true. Both of those are the moral, and because it has there's just multiple levels of theme there.
Well, the pain of growing up, which is to become autonomous.
It's to be both of those things, right.
Totally, and you do have to reconcile with your native culture. You have to be useful. You have to be somebody in the culture you live in, and you have to find your spot in it. And that's not an easy process, And I think Barbie captures all of that and I thought it was just super entertaining, surprisingly poignant, and something new. I felt like this was something new. This film.
Can't wait to see what Greta Gerwig does next.
Well, that's what I was prepared to talk about, Doug. So
what's that?
About why it's so successful. Yes. What you just said is why it might have been so successful outside of story structure. And so I thought that's why I thought that's the kind of things we would talk about.
Oh,
all right. Well, all right. Hey, okay. Actually, Doug, give everybody where they should go for you. I got Faraway Bird up here right now. Faraway Bird. Here you go.
Faraway Bird is the historical novel I wrote. I have to say, though, I have been deep into the production line of the Heroines Labyrinth book. It looks like the title is going to be Heroines with a subtitle underneath it, Archetypal Designs and Heroine-Led Fiction. That might be the subtitle, but we're working on it. I'm really excited because the reality that the next book will be out probably February 2024 is very exciting, and I cannot wait. But in the meantime, if you want to read a book that shows how I applied both the hero's journey and the heroine's labyrinth, it is in Faraway Bird, which is a true account of Byzantine Empress Theodora.
All right. And Brianna, I've got yours right here.
Yep. So I have a
subscribe link. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to put in the, I'm sorry. Let me put in the chat, Faraway Bird, the link right here. So there you go. That's the link so if you're looking for it, you can just go to it right here. So I'm going to put your link also here, Brianna. Here is Brianna's link.
Yeah, so I don't really use social media anymore, but if you want to follow me and the projects that I'm working on, I have a newsletter that I'm now doing every month. And I know some people from the stream are there. James Bacon, actually, we were just emailing each other because he was.
I was wondering if James had been part of the beta read. I was wondering.
Yes, he's gonna be reading one of the screenplays that sometimes I let a select number of people from my subscribers read some of my stuff and give their feedback if they want. So it's a much more behind the scenes look at some of the stuff I'm working on. Sometimes it's interactive. But yeah, so that's the way to keep up with me if you want to know what I'm up to.
All
so
right.
Deleted Scenes, a separate book, like a compliment.
Yeah, I need to get a better giveaway, but that's the only one I have right now. Because I have a novel, City of Reckoning, and there was some content from that novel that I ended up removing from there. But there were some extra fun times with some of the characters that I decided to just put in a separate little PDF for people.
That's a smart idea. I like that.
Yeah, that's one of my giveaways. It was a lot. There's actually have even more stuff than what's in there. That there's a whole POV that got removed. But
are you writing any new story? Like, are you working on is there another work in progress that you're working on? Or are there multiple?
Yes, there's a lot that I'm working on. So this novel, there's going to be a sequel to that, and I'm going to be getting back to working on that soon. But I'm also working on. Right now, my focus is on getting portfolio pieces together as a writer-director. So this was about a year ago. I met with Kamran, and he gave me my advice, and I've been working on that for the past year. So I have 2 screenplays, feature screenplays I'm working on. Both of those are they're both in different stages of editing, getting people's feedback and stuff, and then also short films and stuff like that. So that's kind of the stuff that I will share on there, like what I'm up to there, and then. Some point I'll get back to writing the sequel for my City of Reckoning book.
Awesome.
Soon, hopefully. Yeah. But yeah, always working on lots of stuff.
All right. And if you're here or watching live or on replay, please do like the stream and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to be live tomorrow in the morning for a productivity stream. We're going to try to have the perfect day tomorrow. We're going to try to have the perfect day tomorrow. Can we do the perfect day?
It's Barbie land, baby. The perfect day.
We're going to try to have the perfect day tomorrow. So everybody stay with me. I'm going to be up at 5 o'clock or 4:45 a.m. in the morning. We'll try to get ready at 5 o'clock in the morning, have a productivity stream. We'll have the morning grind at 9:30 a.m. We might have another productivity stream after that. For those who are in different time zones. And then tomorrow night, well, I've seen requests for a members only stream, or we might be going to, I need to get the preview of the virtual, I've got a virtual tavern and a virtual coffee shop that people can walk around in.
and I want people to do
I have
that.
visited
So,
the
who knows?
secret.
She has done that. Yes, it's been a while. So maybe tomorrow we either need to have a members only stream, or maybe it's time to actually have everybody in the virtual coffee shop.
And you can walk around in it.
Yeah, you can walk around in it. Yeah, you can walk around it, and it's fantastic because, like, if you're over here and somebody else is over here, then you don't have a virtual communication with each other. But as you approach one another, then your video streams show up on the screen for each other, so you communicate with each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So I
that's
want to do it.
cool.
So I love the stream. I love the stream. Yeah, no, I'll send you links maybe. Let's see what's going on. So because I mean, it would be fantastic. I've been trying to get that going on, but there's been so much going on. I've been writing the Tales of Rabavania first movie script. Like for the that's occupied all of my attention for the past about 3 weeks, and so I haven't done much else. So join us in the coffee shop, Doug. So I'll see you there. All right,
that sounds
Thank
awesome.
you so much, everybody. I love this conversation. This is tops. This was the tops conversation of the of tabletop. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
All right, grind on, everybody. See you in the morning.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.